call to order the December meeting of the Morrisville Planning and Zoning Board and ask Sanjay to give us an invocation.
Thank you. Dear wise and loving one, we thank you for your many and abundant blessings. We thank you for giving us the ability to serve on this community, on this Planning and Zoning Board. For the last PZB meeting of this year, grant us ears to listen to the people, grant us with clear insight and wisdom to impart judgment, considering the merits and pitfalls of each matter placed in front of us. Last but not the least, grant us wisdom to engage respectfully in meaningful discussion to further the betterment of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. So our first order is to adopt the agenda. Any changes from your side, Michelle, staff?
No, they're not.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead with our agenda. Item 4 is adoption of minutes. We will have a chance to review the minutes from November. If so, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Thank you. This evening we have a full complement of board members, and our alternate member is with us too. The alternate member will be involved in the discussion but not the voting. Item 6 is public comment, which is an opportunity for anyone. It's an open invitation to anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board on any matter, not specifically the special use permit that is before us. So if you have anything else you'd like to bring to our attention, please come up to the microphone now. Seeing none, we'll move on to new business with public comment, which is item 9.
Good evening. The item that I have for you tonight is a special use permit, and this is a quasi-judicial procedure. All special use permits are. So I'm going to ask Attorney Gray to go over just kind of the basics of quasi-judicial before I do a brief staff presentation.
All right, Mr. Chair, well, if that's acceptable, I'll dive in. I think several members of the board have been through a quasi-judicial permit application before, but just as a reminder, it is a quasi-judicial process, and that means it's kind of like a court process. Witnesses who testify will be sworn, and so you will receive evidence under oath. And if others testify outside the applicant's team of witnesses, the applicant has the opportunity to cross-examine those witnesses. And Ms. Nye has put in your packet attachment 3, which is a short overview of the quasi-judicial process. And you will see in there, item number 4 is the standards that the applicant, any applicant, must meet to obtain special use permit. And so the burden is on the applicant to bring forward to you evidence that would support each of those findings. And then at the conclusion of the hearing, you'll be asked to determine whether or not the applicant has met those criteria and making your recommendation to council. The law also provides that, again, like a court, that as you are like the jury, that you not have a fixed opinion when you come into this matter tonight, that you are more or less a blank slate, and you wait and you listen and you hear the evidence that's presented and you make your decision based on the evidence that's presented. The law also says that you should not have any undisclosed communication with the applicant or the applicant's team outside of this hearing, and that you do not have any close familial or any business relationship with the applicant. And if you do, you should disclose that before we dive in. And the law also says that you not have a financial interest in the outcome. So again, those are all the sort of the boundaries around this process. And I guess I would contrast it with a rezoning where, property is being rezoned from residential to commercial. You can certainly entertain any citizen input that wants to tell you why you should not do that, and they can basically have any opinion they want to bring forward. But in this context, you're really looking at the seven standards that the ordinance provides as standards for an SUP, and the applicant has to meet. So just having an opinion about a concrete plant is not really material to the decision tonight. It has to be related to these standards. So I hope that makes sense, and happy to answer any questions as we, either now or as we go along.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. So maybe here's a moment for us to just double check that does anybody have any conflict of interest or any communication outside of this meeting? So we're good there. Perhaps, Mr. Attorney, you could give us some guidance on some of the questions and discussions that we can have, because I anticipate a number of questions. Any particular guidance for those?
Well, again, I think I would wait and hear what evidence is presented, and you can certainly ask questions about that evidence.
Thank you.
You can dig into that deeper, ask for more information, clarification. That's all perfectly legitimate.
Thank you. So we'll move on to Natalie to give us the overview.
I think before I get started, we should swear in anybody who would like to be talking tonight.
So anyone who will be or is planning to speak tonight.
Yes, so I ask anyone present tonight to speak on this item in favor or against, please stand to be sworn in at this time. Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth or evidence presented before the Planning and Zoning Board of the town of Morrisville regarding the special use permit for a heavy industrial use to accommodate the future development of a concrete plant at 0 Airport Boulevard, SUP 1902? I do.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And I have a sign-in sheet up there, so if you didn't sign in, please do so when you come forward.
All right, thank you, Marty. So I'll do a brief staff overview of the proposal here, and then I will hand it over to the applicant, and they'll provide evidence and testimony based on and how they meet the standards, the special use standards. So the special use permit tonight, as you may have just heard from Marty, it's a heavy industrial use. It's for the future development of a concrete plant. That is the location of the proposed concrete plant. The address is 0 Airport Boulevard. It's actually off of International Drive. Once, if approved and going through the site plan process, it'll receive a proper address off of International Drive. So the property is just over 6 acres. It's industrial management zoning district, and it's currently vacant. This is the preliminary site plan that the applicant provided. This is included in your packet, attachment 1. This is their proposed use. As you can see in the previous slide, you could see that International Drive kind of stopped at the very beginning of the property. The proposal will extend International Drive to the edge of the property. You'll see the proposed use of the concrete plant, a parking lot in the front of the site with an office administrative type building. In the rear of the site is the material storage and larger industrial equipment. While this is a preliminary site site plan. They will be asked to stay in substantial conformance with this as if they move forward. The site plan shows some environmental features on the site, tree preservation areas, some landscape buffers, and also if you notice around the industrial area in the rear, there's additional buffers that's required per our UDO, some additional fencing and planting. And like I said before, this will require a site plan review at the staff level, which will go in greater detail. This is a preliminary site plan, and that the staff level site plan review is much more robust, but it will still need to adhere to this plan, and that is if this special use permit is approved tonight or recommended for approval. So these are the special use standards that the applicant will need to provide evidence and testimony for. There are 7 standards. They were also included in your packet, but I can always click back to this while they're presenting if you'd like to provide that information for you. After hearing the evidence and testimony, if you believe that they have met all 7 of the standards, staff recommends approval of the special use permit with a few conditions. The first is that the proposed development will operate and be developed in substantial conformance with the evidence and testimony presented by the petitioner. So that would include not only what was included in the packet, but also what's heard tonight. And then the second 2 conditions are more related to transportation improvements. These transportation improvements are pretty substantial, and that's why staff feels that they should be conditions. These would be required per the staff site plan review anyway, but these are pretty substantial. The first transportation-related item, which is the second condition, is the improvement of International Drive, and that is to the edge of the property. If you remember back, the original or the aerial shows that most of that isn't done today. And the third condition, due to the TIA that was provided by the applicant, there is a slight delay in the intersection at Southport Drive and Chapel Hill Road. So we are requesting that they make improvements to that as well. And those details will be figured out at the site plan review through staff and the applicant. But those 2 conditions staff felt were important to include in this special use permit. So tonight is public comment session. I'm going to hand it over to the applicant so they can provide their evidence and testimony. The Planning and Zoning Board has the ability to approve the submittal, approve it with conditions, or deny it. You have, I believe, some motions written out for you to help guide you in that way. And just, again, as a reminder, this is a quasi-judicial process. So I will hand it over to the applicant. I have their...
Good evening. My name is Isabel Maddox. I'm an attorney. My address is P.O. Box 946, Raleigh 27602. I'm here tonight with principals of L&L Concrete, which desires to put a concrete plant in Morrisville. Here with me are Nelson Loureiro, also Keith Mercer, also of L&L, and then we have our experts, Randy Miller, our civil engineer, Jeff Weller of Stantec, our transportation engineer, and Tom Hester, MAI appraiser. Also here is Glenn Futrell, who's the owner of the property. Our client, L&L, has a contract to purchase that property, subject to the special use permit. As Natalie said, this property is around 6 acres, just off Airport Road, fronting on International Drive, to be improved with this project. We believe that this project, it will be compatible with the area. It is in an industrial management zoning district, and there are a number of industrial uses surrounding this property. There's a truck rental, there's a waste transfer station that's being constructed right now just across International Drive, which you issued your special use permit in the last year or so. and there's a Ryder truck rental facility, a John Deere facility, and a construction company all abutting this property. As Natalie indicated, there are 7 standards that need to be complied with in order to, satisfy the requirements for a special use permit. And we are required to submit substantial material and competent evidence to assure you that those are being satisfied. And we're generally doing that by having experts testify to those matters. So I would like to qualify each of these witnesses that I'm getting ready to present as experts. They'll present their name and qualifications when they get up here. And my first witness that I'd like to call is Randy Miller, our civil engineer. And he's going to go through, and his testimony will be somewhat lengthy in that he is the primary person responsible for designing the site plan, which means complying with the UDO in all aspects. And so he's going to have to go through each one of those, many of those provisions where he is feels like this proposed plan satisfies the requirements of the UDO. So, Randy? And just to add one thing, we do have affidavits from each of these witnesses. They're going to give you generally the testimony. We have written affidavits that we're going to hand out.
Okay. I apologize, man. Good evening, board members. My name is Randy Miller. I'm with Thompson Associates at 1149 Executive Circle in Cary. I am a professional engineer in North Carolina. I've been practicing for 34 years, and I've been doing site plans in and around this area and all throughout the state of North Carolina for various municipalities, including the town of Morrisville. We've been working on this site plan for L&L Concrete with staff and going back and forth and trying to make sure that it meets all standards of the ordinance and the UDO. As shown on the site plan, the proposed concrete plant will comply with all regulations and standards applicable in the IM zoning district, and specifically applicable to a concrete plant and a heavy manufacturing use. The proposed site plan for the L&L concrete plant will be constructed in general compliance with the ordinances related to the public health and safety as currently stated in the UDO stuff. The site will have buffers around the perimeter. In addition, there's a 50-foot riparian buffer on either side of the stream that goes through the site. We have met with the Corps of Engineers and the DEQ to determine that it is a stream and will comply with all requirements with that, obtaining all the permits to cross it. They already said, we could cross it with all the applicable permits. So we have, that is also going to, even though it doesn't count as a tree save area or a buffer area, but there'll be that swath if you saw through that site plan.
And if you want to put the site plan up there, we have access to that.
Where's it at?
Yeah, there we go. You got a couple of maps.
Yeah, we have, so the buffered area where there'll be no construction, that will also sort of enhance or act as a buffer for any off-site views from International Drive. In addition, there'll be a street yard buffer along International Drive too. So with all the buffers and the natural stream buffers and stuff, the whole facility will really be isolated or screened from any off-site views. But as Elizabeth already informed y'all, the surrounding properties are all similar uses. With the John Deere, with a Ryder truck facility, with a well drilling facility and stuff, they're all similar type of uses around there. The plan itself, basically, so coming in off the site, we're going to use and enhance an existing shared driveway There's already an easement for that. And then we're going to have a large parking facility for the parking for the employees and the office use. The building is proposed to be used as a maintenance facility for trucks and stuff with an office facility. And then we will continue to drive on back across the stream. And as you noted, one of the reasons we have this crossing here is to limit impacts of that stream. We are crossing it, 90 degrees as best as possible. And this has been preliminarily shown to the Corps and stuff. And, they said that this will be part of the process of getting a permit, but they preliminarily agreed to the fact that this would be a good place to cross it. And then we get back to the actual plant proper itself, where the materials and stuff will be stored for the concrete plant. And the materials will be stored, basically you're talking your sand and your gravel. There'll be a batch silo plant, a silo there that will actually hold the concrete mixture itself. And all these things that are stored, it's basically like storing materials to make a cake. Because, the gravel is going to be put in the truck, the sand would put in the truck, the concrete mixture would be put directly in the truck. They add the water or whatever and they mix it and then they go. There is some chemicals and stuff, there'll be some additives and stuff. It'll be in a building that will be protected for any spillage. And these chemicals are not flammable and they're not really hazardous. But there will be containment areas for them, and if needed, they are fed directly into the truck itself, the truck proper. There isn't any, they're not out in the open. In addition to that, any diesel fuel they have on tank, they'll have a double-walled diesel fuel tank, there again with spill-proof prevention around it too, just to fuel trucks. We do have stormwater ponds to meet our stormwater requirements to treat all the stormwater. In addition to that, the actual concrete devices, batching plant, if you want to call it whatever, they do have a containment area where they will contain anything, any byproducts, any water. If they rinse the trucks out or something like that, it'll go into that facility, which is basically a swimming pool with baffles, prior to exiting into the stormwater pond. So it's sort of anything off the trucks or whatever will be double cocked. In addition to that, as far as any dust or anything like that, when you're actually mixing and putting it together in a truck, there is I think Nelson, you told me there's like a dust collector that's right there, dumping this stuff in the truck to collect any dust particles that come off like that. Our drives and our sight distances and our turning radius have been designed in a way that we're trying to make sure that traffic flows safely and it won't result in any danger to anybody, and all vehicular movements are safe, both on the site and getting off the site. With all the buffers and all the stormwater facilities and all the traffic flow we have and the way that the roads are laid out, we believe that this site is designed not to be a danger to the public safety. In addition, the applicant has agreed to make significant public street improvements to International Drive. Like I said, we're going to go from where it ends now all the way up to the front of to the back of the property line. That constitutes about 427 linear feet of roadway improvements with curb and gutter on both sides and a sidewalk. As stated before, we think this is this fits in well with the area. Property is surrounded by the John Deere training facility, a Ryder truck rental, storage place, and a cable installation company. And all these properties are zoned the same zoning, the IM zoning. Based on the zoning, the surrounding uses, and the way the site plan is designed to be in compliance with Morrisville regulation, It's my opinion that the proposed concrete plant will be in harmony with the intensity, scale, and character of the development existing or planned in the surrounding area. And this use, we don't think will also tax the existing services of the town of Morrisville. There's 2 fire stations located near this plant. Fire Station 2 is about 1.5 miles from this plant site. Fire Station 1 is about 1.7 miles from this plant site. Police departments located about 1.7 miles also from the site. Therefore, based on this site's location and the design and proximity of emergency services, it's my opinion that the proposed concrete plant will not generate needs for fire and police protection that cannot be adequately handled by the existing infrastructure that the town already has in. For the concrete plant itself, as far as water usage, because of the stormwater ponds and stuff, they will be drawn from that for use. And we also will be having getting with Wake County Health Department on drilling a well to use water in the concrete mixing use site. And that water will be going into a water tank. They'll have a water tank on site that they will use the well to fill that water tank to keep the water they need for any use. The only water that we'll be using that will be town of Morrisville water would be for the bathrooms proposed, 2 bathrooms proposed, and then obviously we will be running a fire hydrant line back to the site for fire coverage. But the only actual water demand would be for off at 2 bathrooms. So we won't be really taxing the town of Morrisville water supply in actually making of the concrete. So based on that and the stormwater plans that we have and the utility connections, we just feel that it won't generate an undue taxation of the existing water for the supply or the sewage disposal capacity the town has, and that this use will be a good fit in this area and would benefit the community, and the fact that you create jobs, you create tax base, but with all the development stuff going on in the surrounding area, this is centrally located that trips can be made and will have less impact on surrounding travel ways to get there. But I just feel we have tried to make a good use of this site and that it fits the town's requirements. And do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Miller. At this time, I'm going to ask the board if we have any specific questions for Mr. Miller rather than general questions.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the type and size of the trucks that will be used and what their load will be when they're fully loaded, and how many trips they might be making per day in and out of the facility?
I would have to defer to the traffic gentleman on that. He dealt with all the traffic stuff. I'm more with the site stuff,
Okay.
so I apologize.
That's fine. Thank you.
But let's hold that one for now. Anything else specific to?
No questions.
I have a question. I looked at the drawing, and regarding the size of the building, it indicates there's going to be 16 employees, and on the right side, all of the parking is trucks. So I'm assuming you own mixed trucks. That's part of this facility, that you do general contracting as well as make concrete, and you own trucks. Is that correct?
And the parking is like for the trucks itself. So like when they come, they'll be parking in a space on a truck they use to go drive.
You won't have company-owned trucks on this property?
The concrete trucks are owned by L&L Concrete.
Okay. Do you know how many you expect to be there? Based on what's indicated from something like 174 trips, and if those are all your trucks, there's parking for 7 to go into the maintenance shop. Is the back lots where all the storage is, will you also have 25 trucks parked back there somewhere? How many trucks do you anticipate having?
There, yeah.
We can have our client, who's going to be in head of the operations, speak to that, I think. But we do have some other witnesses to present.
Okay, all right. It was more around the engineering. So when I looked at the 6,000 square foot for a maintenance shop for trucks, and then 6,000 square foot on top for office, will the office have general contractors, truck drivers? What's the intent of that office?
To my knowledge, it's L&L Concrete's office.
We're operating the plant, or its general offices to do bid packages for work and truck drivers?
I think that's really more of a question for
Okay,
the
okay.
We'll hold that one.
operator.
We'll hold that. Thank you.
We've given you some notice on that one.
I did have a
Sandy.
question related to, you talked briefly about the dust collection that happens at the mouth of the, where you deliver the particle. So that collection, where are you going to dispose that off on the site?
There again, the actual, once you get down to the nitty gritty of the operation, I mean, I'd briefly talked with the owner back and forth on what things that they're going to have there, and that's something that I think it just fits on the truck, and it comes back into, the only dust you're really going to have is actually when it comes down is for the concrete mixture itself.
But that's
Yeah,
what I'm asking.
yeah,
right?
and I
So
think it's
you
connected.
collected- you
I think it
collect-
goes right back into the silo that it's coming from.
Okay.
I have one more engineering question related, and maybe this is more for the city than it is for you, regarding the new road section that's put in. So the city's recommending 50% or 100% that they pay for that.
For the road improvements?
All of it.
The property across the street, they paid a payment in lieu for half of the property, so what's hatched out there is a payment in lieu. They will be constructing, L&L Concrete will be constructing the entire road, both sides, but they will receive the payment in lieu from the across the street property that we have collected in order to improve the entire road, not just half of it.
And you'll determine that pricing, the design, and you'll submit that to them, and then you'll
Well,
also be doing
it's my understanding that going through this process, like I said, the owner will be responsible for improving it all the way to the property line. And there's monies available for that's on the other side. And those monies will be contributed to what he's already putting in to complete the other side. So in other words, so the whole thing will be, on both sides will be done. But they'll be responsible monetarily from the center line over to their property line for that half. And then the monies that they've collected for fee in lieu of for the other side of the road will be used to complete that road, that part. But it'll all be done at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
I did have a follow-up question on that. And maybe this is more to the town, right? The address is 0 Airport Boulevard, yet the connection is from International Parkway. And when I look at the bigger picture, it seems that there is possibility to have the road, loop back onto Airport Boulevard. Isn't that correct, or am I reading it wrong?
The proposed site plan, it will not be going off of airport. It will just be international.
But in general, is there International Drive connecting to Airport Boulevard sometime in the future in the plan? Do you know?
There is a proposed Morrisville East connector, which would tee off International and go both to the new McCrimmon and to airport. But I think that's a traffic-type question maybe for Dylan or one of the traffic.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand that just before I ask the gentleman the
Sure.
question. That's all, nothing else. But I think that, yeah, I'm good.
Mr. Minner, this may or may not be an engineering question, so forgive me. I'm intrigued about the well and whether there's going to be a lot of water drawn from the ground table and whether that might have an effect on any nearby residents.
I don't believe so. We're not talking about a big water tank. Not much water will be used. We we're just going to start the process of trying to get the well site located and approved through the health department. And I really can't answer that question until we find if what the actual volume or the draw from that well site will be. But I don't think so that it would affect, because I don't know how many other existing wells are really out there.
Right.
Out there.
Yeah.
And like I said, the only reason was just to have that so they're not taxing the town's actual main water supply all the time to probably fill up the water tank and just have it there to use it when they need to use it.
And Wake County is the authority that will give you that permit to do the well, correct?
Correct, right. We'll have to go through Wake County, get the approval for the well and stuff, and have the proper separation from, any sewer lines and the creek that runs through there and stuff, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I think we can let you go and ask for the next victim.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to call our traffic engineer, Jeff Weller, to speak to the impacts of traffic on this site, on this area.
So you got some pre-warning.
I did. Good evening. A little bit tall. My name is Jeff Weller. I work for Stantec Consulting Services. The address is 801 Jones Franklin Road, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27606. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina with 15 years of experience. I have been involved in reviewing TIAs, creating TIAs, or reviewing the improvements recommended by TIAs, both for state of North Carolina and on the private side for Stantec. I'm the engineer of record for the study. The TIA includes trips generated of 172 vehicles per day, with 22 in the morning peak hour and 14 in the evening peak hour. In order to go from the existing counts, which were collected in the fall of 2018, to the proposed build year of 2020, a growth rate of 2.5% per year, compounded annually, was added to the existing volumes. The results of the study, so if you think of level of service as grades like in school where A is the best and F is the worst, when comparing the future no build to the future build conditions, all of the levels of service, so the letter grades, remain the same. Those thresholds are based off of average seconds of delay per vehicle. In summary, the trips generated will not have any undue or any impact on the congestion delay of the network and infrastructure surrounding the area. Let's see here. Sorry, reading through the notes for you. So it's also the opinion that the proposed site will not result in any sort of safety hazard. And I believe that the additions of the trips on the network are mitigated by the recommended improvements included in the TIA. So I feel like if you want to go ahead and do questions, I have a feeling that the traffic tends to be a better answer of questions as opposed to just reading the prepared statement.
Thank you. We've actually seen the packet, I think.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
let me start with Chris.
I see your start times, you had 22, and then at the end of the day, 14 for peak. Does that include the 16 employees that work there?
Yes. So the trips generated, since normally trips generated for development are based off of the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generations, since there is no concrete plant use in that manual, we did comparison studies. So we took 3 concrete plants in the area, and based off of size and volumes counted for those sites, we then generated these rates. So the 22 in the morning and 14 in the evening, which half of them are in and half of them are out, do include employees. Yes.
So you have 7 people leaving at peak hour and 16 people work there?
So there are, and I can't necessarily speak to the operations, but a lot of times people, or I would expect the employees to be leaving after the peak hour.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Sanjay.
So is this TI count for full-fledged operation, or is this based upon, is it a 24/7 plant and therefore you expect all this traffic all day long, or is it purely 9 to 5, and is that so help me with the parameterization, right? The numbers, that 22 number, is that for 24/7 operation, or is it really based upon 9 to 5 operation?
So the daily traffic is based over 24 hours, but I do not expect the operations to be 24 hours. When we get to the proposed owners and the operational impact, they will be able to tell you exactly or give you a better idea of what the hours of operations would be. But we typically look at more of a 8 to 5 or 7 to 6 type scenario when we are looking at traffic studies.
Okay. And this is at full capacity?
Yes.
No.
So I guess my main question is, everybody's been behind the truck knows there's much more of an impact of a concrete truck than a car. So in the morning, these guys will be heading out to a job. I imagine there's obviously you're doing concrete all day, but there is going to be a disproportionate impact in the morning. And then there isn't really anything in the manuals, though, that would capture sort of the way that feels. So I don't know how you would necessarily, you said you'd monitor. Did you go to other plants and actually do a count?
Yes, we did. We did driveway counts at 3 different sites.
Okay, and that would account for the trucks. I guess, I just feel like saying, okay, well, I'm driving my car and there's not the same thing as a concrete truck who's going to be at a busy intersection, who's not going to be able to get going, and that could have a larger impact to the overall flow than regular car coming in. So I think the concrete trucks are probably going to be leaving out in a direction at a time when most people will be coming in. So maybe that would balance out, but I just know that area is somewhat congested already with the other uses that also kind of come and go with trucks.
Sure. So based off of our counts, our traffic counts that were collected, when we do our modeling, when we do our analysis, then the percent of heavy trucks from the counts is then incorporated into those models, which then, which helps to simulate startup delays from those bigger trucks. Like you said, when you're at a red light, if they're the first one to go, it's going to take them a few extra seconds. So those parameters are included in our models.
Because if you get one truck trying to turn left off of International Drive to turn to go down 54 or Chapel Hill Road, I mean, that could take 10 minutes just for that one truck to go there. So, I mean, I guess maybe there's a way they can come out the other way, but it's just a constricted area. That's my main concern is.
Yeah. I mean, based off of, being a driver and seeing things in the field, if there's, so International Drive or Southport and 54 is unsignalized. So generally drivers that are wanting to go left, especially during a peak hour, are going to go down to Aviation, turn right, and then turn left at the signal. So.
Okay, thank you.
Tim?
This actually may be more of a question for owners, but on the employee headcount was listed at the 16, and some modeling was done on that. Are there any other folks there? Are we looking at contractors or other folks that would be using the facility that are not included in the estimates?
Yeah, that would definitely be a question for the owner-operator.
Okay, table that.
Kenneth, questions? Okay. And again, probably a question for the operator. Where do you think the trucks are going to go?
Where do I think the trucks are going to go?
The answer is everywhere, right?
Yeah, they're going to go everywhere. We had distributions in the TIA, which I don't have memorized in terms of, these distributions were, agreed upon when we had our scope meeting with the town and with DOT, who, did a cursory review on the TIA itself. But I don't remember, like I said, I don't remember exactly offhand which percents were going in each direction. But we do assume that they go in some distribution everywhere.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Weller. Ms. Maddox.
So, Mr. Weller, I just want to follow up one question. So is it, you say you're a professional and you do these TIAs frequently?
Yes, ma'am.
In your opinion, after taking into account your analysis, do you think this project will cause undue congestion or traffic hazards?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Okay, our next witness is Tom Hester, MAI appraiser.
Hello, my name is Tom Hester. I'm self-employed fee appraiser, 2424 Glenwood Avenue in Raleigh. I've got the MAI designation as a member of the Appraisal Institute. I've state certified general appraiser regulated by the Appraisal Board of North Carolina. It was North Carolina broker's license regulated by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. I've been appraising properties in Wake County in North Carolina for about 38 years. I have looked at this proposed site plan and looked at the neighborhood and the other surrounding land uses that are around this property. To me, when I'm looking at property and trying to figure out the potential effects on nearby properties, I'm really looking at properties that are different, that are different from each other. In this case, the properties that are nearby are pretty similar. This is an industrial park. There are other heavy industrial users nearby. There's a construction and debris transfer plant under construction across the road. There are 7 or 8 truck terminals nearby or on International Drive, a truck rental adjacent, a well pumping service adjacent. So when I look at this site, it's surrounded by other uses that are not exactly the same, but I consider to be similar in their intensity. I'm usually looking at nearby residential and trying to determine an effect on the nearby residential. In this case, the closest residential that I could identify was about a half a mile away in a straight line, and probably more like a mile driving from this site, and with many other properties between this and the closest residential. So there was really no residential to analyze or to consider. Really just other industrial properties next to this one. The site is, based on the site plan, pretty well buffered from adjacent properties. It's got the tree conservation on the north side. It's got vegetative buffer around most of the rest of the perimeter. So visually, it will be somewhat buffered. But I think that the main consideration that I looked at is what are the adjacent and nearby properties. And again, very similar in terms of use and intensity. Based on my experience looking at properties and trying to analyze the effect caused by adjacent properties and how one property affects the next, based on that experience, it is my professional conclusion that the proposed development will not substantially injure the value of the adjoining properties. It is also my conclusion that the proposed development will be in harmony with the intensity, scale, and character of the existing development in the area. Be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hester. Do we have any questions?
No. I have a question. When you say nearby property, so what is a nearby property?
Well, it's in an industrial park, so I'm generally looking.
I mean, is there like a distance from the property? What do you consider a nearby property in your professional?
So first I'm looking at what's immediately adjacent, and then I'm looking at sort of 2 or 3 rings out from there. And I'm looking at really the properties that, I mean, once you get 3 or 4 properties away, then the properties in between are going to have more of an effect than this proposed property. So that's what I'm looking at.
I'm just curious because no one has mentioned there's 2 other concrete plants right nearby this, less than a quarter mile away.
That's right.
So it just feels like it's almost been purposefully not mentioned. And maybe I'm incorrect in doing that, but it seems odd to me that hasn't come up yet. Because certainly one concrete plant wouldn't adversely affect the value of another concrete batching plant.
Right.
I wouldn't think. So I don't know. I mean, so maybe that's the reason why it hasn't been mentioned. I don't know.
No, we have them in a next slide.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I just, haven't seen it. So.
I'm not sure.
There are 2 nearby, and so when I look at that, I think, well, that's the existing condition. That's
right. I mean, as a layperson, it seems like, hey, as an appraiser, that would be like, hey, this is great because this fits right in. That's why I'm wondering why it wasn't mentioned. It seems like that'd be a plus.
No, it does seem like this is right where it should be.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Did we ever figure out how to get these? So this does give you a little bit of some of the businesses that are nearby. And I guess, is that the best slide to show the adjoining uses? So the concrete, I don't know if it's a touch screen, but you'll see there's concrete supply right here and then one right here. So it's just down International Drive from the site. No intent to keep that a secret. We do agree that is one of the things that means that this use is compatible with the area that it's located in. Next, I would like to call Keith Mercer, who is an employee of L&L Concrete. And Keith is going to primarily talk to us about safety. He's got some of the details on the operations. Mr. Lorero, who's here, who has more details, unfortunately has laryngitis tonight, so he is not able to speak in any detail, but if there's a question, I can probably relay it to him and get him to whisper an answer. Let's have Mr. Mercer come up at this point. I'm going to ask him a few questions. Let's just stand side by side. Mr. Mercer, first give your name and address.
My name is Keith Mercer. I live at 8831 Camden Park Drive, and that's in Raleigh, North Carolina.
And how long have you been working for L&L?
7 years.
And will you be in charge of safety at the new site, the new plant?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
And has a safety plan been developed for this
Yes,
plant?
yes, it has.
And what kind of specific actions or specific requirements are in that safety plan?
The establishment of the safety committee, job-specific training focused on safety, periodic retraining of employees upon changes to workplace practices or after any accident, clear first aid procedures, safety policies and instructions for each type of equipment and vehicles used for this facility, weekly meetings of employees to update and remind employees of safety measures and requirements, and posting of safety rules and requirements in break areas and common area where employees gather.
Do you know about nearby emergency services?
Yes.
There
are two existing town of Morrisville fire stations, which was mentioned previously by Randy. Fire station number 2 is located at 10632 Chapel Hill Road, approximately 1.5 miles from the proposed concrete plant. Fire station number 1 is located at 200 Town Hall Drive, approximately 1.7 miles from the proposed concrete plant.
And have you reviewed the site plan?
Yes, I have.
And so based on your review of the site plan and taking into account the safety plan, is it your opinion that this property will be safe?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do y'all have any questions for Mr. Mercer?
Can you give us a little bit of your qualifications to be the head of safety here at this new plant?
Experience over many years of not just being in the concrete business, but being in the construction business. I have over 30 years experience.
Tim.
Any historical safety records that can be provided?
This will be a new plant, so
right.
There won't
Any comparable? And I recognize that, but anything comparable?
Well, we don't have anything that would be comparable to the plant itself.
So along those lines, so are you guys now buying concrete from other plants, and this is going to be your first batching plant? Is that why?
Correct.
Okay. So you'll be hiring people that I'm assuming have an idea how to run a plant.
I'm sorry.
You'll be hiring people that know how to run a plant to start this up.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Are these just safety questions or plant questions in general?
I think we're concentrating on safety, but if you've got plant in general, then Ms. Maddox might relay that to the owner.
I don't have safety questions, but as we move into
we'd like to revisit
If that's all right with you, Ms. Maddox, we'll open it up to more general plant questions as well.
I do have one safety question. What kind of training do you give, or have you planned for contamination as a result, public employee getting infected by the particle dust or anything of that sort coming out of the plant?
I understand what he's saying.
He's asking what sort of plans do you have if one of the employees gets exposed to a lot of dust, or I guess gets in his eyes or lungs?
So dust particles from the cement.
Well, on the facility, there'll be, for eyes, there'll be eye wash stations to flush your eyes. It's always required in dusty areas to wear respirators. And everybody will be trained on the proper usage of the respirators and how to asphyxiate them to your face and use them properly. Each employee will be trained in their specific area on all the safety standards that they're required to know and do their job properly.
Okay.
General questions?
General questions?
So, Ms. Maddox, can we take advantage of Mr. Mercer's experience here, plus open it up to more general operational type questions?
We'll do our best.
Okay. So let's start with Chris.
My questions are what I originally asked about the employees on this site. Will there be truck drivers, general contractors? I'm assuming They're also mixing, and they'll have contractors and construction workers meet them. I'm trying to get a feel for all of the positions, what's in the office space, and who's coming and going on the site.
The comings and going during the daytime on site would be truck drivers for the mixers only. In the morning time, it'll be office employees, mechanics on site, the people who actually run the plant daily, which probably be 4, maybe 5 people. The rest will be truck drivers.
But no contractors will be on site?
No contractors. This is for batching plant only. It's not for a construction
So
office.
when somebody orders some concrete, they will call you or email you and order it, and then you'll mix it up and send it to their site?
Correct.
Okay, and all of the trucks leaving are company-owned, correct? Or
Correct.
Also batching. Do you know how many trucks?
12 to 14 trucks.
So that's a lot of cycles. And then when they come back in, you have to rinse the inside of them?
Actually, that's done on site in concrete washout areas.
You had mentioned something about a pool, so you'll have these 12 trucks might circle through. You're going to have maybe 160 times maybe they cycle through. So that's well water that's going in. Where does that water go?
It goes into.
So you're going to have chunks of concrete in the truck. So you have something that goes in because you're going to have residual concrete. You're going to have some chemicals in there. I'm trying to understand where that water goes. I'm sorry, you have laryngitis.
I think it is requirement now by most municipalities in the state, as far as like erosion control plans and stuff. All construction sites have concrete washout areas. When these trucks come back, they've already been washed out. They wash out at a off-site, wherever they dump the concrete. There is an approved, to design standard concrete washout area on the construction site. That's where it's washed out and taken care of. So when they come back to this site, they're not washing anything. A truck's already been washed out because it's dumped there on that site at a previously approved concrete washout area that the construction site takes care of and handles properly.
Thank you.
The only wash down that'll be on this site would be just like you normally would wash your vehicle. The outside, the exterior, the trucks.
Thank you.
So you mentioned 12 to 14 trucks. That's at full operation?
Yes.
And how many rounds do you anticipate them doing during the day?
That's total.
Yeah, a day.
30, 35 a day.
30 to 35 a day. And this may be, again, a transportation safety question. So when the truck leaves the plant, and let's say it's on Morrisville Carpenter Drive, and it breaks down or the concrete spills on the road, who would it be the LLN company's responsibility that they would come and clean it up, or what happens to that concrete and that has broken down on the
that would spill on the highway?
Yeah.
If the truck
spill on any of the road,
if it just spilled on the road, we would clean it up. Actually, yes. Okay. But imagine emergency services. If they got there first, they would probably clean it up too. But it's up to our plant to clean it up.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
Just one for confirmation. So the 16 employees that you have, or you will have, is that at full capacity, or is there a plan that the capacity could actually get to 32? What's the ultimate growth for the facility?
I couldn't tell you the ultimate growth, but it's not going to be 32. There's probably room for about maybe 5 more employees, but that would be on-site employees.
On-site employees.
Right.
Okay. So the 16 of that 14 are actually going to be driving and working.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so getting back to the 7 standards that we feel like we've presented competent, substantial, and material evidence that these standards have been satisfied. To sort of recap, the first standard is the proposed development will not materially endanger the public health or safety. You've heard from Mr. Mercer and Mr. Miller. Mr. Mercer on safety practices within the plant and Mr. Miller on safety measures on the site. We believe we have presented substantial material evidence of that is satisfied. The next standard is the proposed development will comply with all regulations and standards generally applicable within the zoning district and specifically applicable to this special use. And we believe we've presented evidence in the form of Mr. Miller's testimony, our civil engineer, that this site plan complies with the UDO. Third, the proposed development will not substantially injure the value of adjoining property. And we've heard from Mr. Hester, our appraiser, and also Mr. Miller, that we believe the site plan has built-in protections, and Mr. Hester has evaluated the area and the adjoining properties and does not believe there will be any injury to these properties. Next is the proposed development will be in harmony with the intensity scale and character of the development in the surrounding area. You've heard from Mr. Hester that he has analyzed the area and he does not believe that he does believe this use will be in harmony with this area. And you've also heard of what the adjoining uses are, the proximity of 2 other concrete plants. Next standard is proposed development will not cause undue traffic congestion or create a traffic hazard. You heard from Mr. Weller, who has who's prepared a TIA and then analyzed the traffic in this area and done counts from other concrete plants. He does not believe this use will cause undue traffic congestion or a traffic hazard. The next standard is proposed development will not generate needs for transportation, water supply, sewage disposal, fire and police, and other public services that cannot be adequately handled by available infrastructure. You've heard from Mr. Miller that we propose a well to generate most of the water used in mixing the concrete, and that the water needs will be fairly minimal, servicing 2 bathrooms and a break room. Same with sewer. There's fire and police protection in close proximity. And we will be doing road infrastructure improvements. So we believe that we'll be assisting to improve the infrastructure, and that the uses of this use will not generate needs for public services that cannot be adequately handled by existing facilities. Finally, this last standard is the proposed development will be consistent with the comprehensive plan. We've not discussed that, but I have reviewed the plan, and this proposed use is consistent with the future land use map, which is a part of the comprehensive plan. It designates this property for industrial use. We believe that locating these types of high-intensity industrial uses in the defined industrial area aids in reducing negative impacts to surrounding properties, and the requested special use permit will allow a needed industrial use, which will help meet infrastructure demands in the growing Morrisville area, in the growing Triangle area, and it's located away from residential uses generally. We would want to confirm that we have submitted affidavits from Mr. Miller, Mr. Weller, Mr. Hester, and Mr. Mercer, and we'd also like to confirm that our application is also part of the record in this case. We believe that with this testimony and our affidavits and our application, we have presented competent, substantial, and material evidence to confirm that we have complied with your standards.
I have a question for Natalie or maybe Dylan, and it relates again to traffic. The item 5, which is shall not cause undue traffic congestion, and yet in your staff recommendations you're saying that the applicant shall provide one or more specific recommended improvements to Southport Drive. That doesn't kind of jive, so.
Sure. I think, and I think Dylan can probably explain this a little bit better, but the road rating hasn't changed, but there is a slight second delay that hasn't moved it into another category from a C to a D or something like that. But our UDO, I believe, still requires any type of extra seconds delay to ask for some help in mitigating that. But I'll have Dylan confirm.
Yeah, that's correct, Chairman. So basically the UDO section, requires physical recommendations for unsignalized intersections. If essentially you need a minimum of a level of service D, but and if the level of service is worse than D, you'll need to at least maintain that level. And basically, based on the TIA that Stantec submitted on the no build in the AM, it was an F level service with a 74.2. In the build scenario, it's an F with a 76.5. So they really need to mitigate for essentially like 2.3 seconds delay. So that is where that comes from. And the staff recommendation is at the stack level to do a proportional payment in lieu to discuss a physical improvement for the intersection.
And have those staff recommendations been discussed with the applicant and agreed?
Yes, they have, but they can be confirmed.
We just learned of this request within the last week. The TIA had been reviewed and approved, and then this came out very recently. I have had conversations with our traffic engineer. He does not agree with staff's recommendation on this point. It's our preference that this not be required because we don't think the traffic impacts justify a further improvements at the intersection. That's our position.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, the second condition about the improvement of International Drive, that's our second condition. That was discussed.
Yes, and we're certainly
agreed upon that.
Willing to do that,
and then
planning on doing that.
And yes, the third condition about the intersection improvement, that would just be a proportional PIL payment that staff is requesting. It wouldn't be probably for that amount of seconds delay, wouldn't be very substantial necessarily, but it's something we would iron out later. But again.
Yeah, I mean, we would plan on further discussions with staff on that. We don't have any sense of how to quantify that amount. Our initial reaction was, Mr. Weller felt like that was not appropriate here. But, this is the special use permit is a separate matter from the site plan. And so we'll continue to have those discussions with staff.
Thank you. So, any other discussion or questions from the board? Attorney Gray, would it be appropriate for me to ask anybody else in the audience who wants to speak?
Yes, sir.
But then they would be subject to cross-examination by Ms. Maddox.
And they would need to be sworn as well, right, if they haven't already been. Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this topic? Please don't be intimidated. Please come forward if you'd like to speak. We're not as scary as some of us look, so please come on up.
I'll speak.
You will have to be sworn in, but...
Yes, please, morning.
If you could give us your name for the record.
My name is Frankie Bonnet. I'm the owner of 414 Airport Boulevard, which is partially adjacent to this property. My concern would be about the well. We also have a well on our property, and we use that water on a daily basis for our business. So I don't know what quantity of water the new well's going to be drawing from the groundwater, and will that affect our property and our daily business?
Thank you.
Might have a question. Or,
Well, just,
okay.
would anybody else like to speak? Lee had a question.
Well, I just want a little more clarification of exactly which property and like how much your well was using. And I guess, do you have anybody that has explained do you have like anything that explains what the impacts may be?
Yeah. Slide. I think you can. Maybe that one right there.
Yeah, that'll work.
There.
So our property is this strip right here, which is right on that corner. We do directional boring and install conduit for fiber and all that. So we fill water tanks on a daily basis, 1,000 gallons a day, or sometimes 2,000 gallons a day from our well. In the summertime, when there's not a lot of rain and it's pretty dry, sometimes the well does go dry because it's not a very deep well.
Has there been anybody that's prevented? I mean, is there any way that you could drill a deeper well? I mean, have you investigated doing that, or has that been an issue with? I mean, do you have anybody like a well company that's talked to you about the problems, or?
No. So far, we've been able to maintain our business and do that, and we can always utilize town water because we do have town water there, or City of Cary water, but we haven't had the need to that. Now, with the concrete plant, depending on how much water they're using, if that decreases the amount of groundwater, it could affect us and not be able to do work. So. Any other questions?
Are you aware if any of the other properties surrounding you also have used well water?
I don't know.
Chairman, before he steps down, I think you should ask Ms. Maddox if she has any questions.
Very good. We'll do that. Thank you.
Would you be willing to meet with us
Sure.
sometime in the next month to kind of just talk about your well needs and ours? And
Sure.
we can hopefully have a way that we're comfortable both.
Yeah.
With that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Not, we'll close that public comment session. Discussion among the board. Any questions, discussion, anything we should consider?
I did have a question, and maybe this may be for the operations person here. Sorry for missing this question. Reading through some of the information, it is my understanding that you would use hot water, or would you be using cold water in the mixer? You know, when the trucks leave, is it the hot water or cold water?
It's, if a special mix calls for it, it's tempered water, cold or hot. And it just depends on the mix of the concrete we were doing, but normally it's just normal water.
Room temperature.
Right, room temperature.
Okay.
So are we ready to make a motion? I think we have some helpful pieces of paper. And I would also draw the board's attention to the suggestion from staff recommendations.
Here, this is probably obvious, but in your packet, you do have a draft resolution with potential findings and ultimate conclusion with the two conditions that are actually three conditions recommended by staff. So you have the suggested motions as staff has given you. That helps moving along.
Thank you.
So I just have a question about that. So we do have this sheet here, which doesn't really specifically mention the conditions. And then we have this separate pack that does mention them, so.
Resolution 305-0 has the conditions attached as part of the.
I have 355. I think it's a, is that a different, am I looking at the?
2019-305-0.
It says 355 on our sheet here, so there's a.
So my apologies, I provided that script for you with those potential options. You can read out the conditions as they're written in the resolution, or you can just say with the conditions recommended by staff. That can be added to.
What is the correct resolution number?
It says 355 on here, and on the agenda it says 305.
Oh, the agenda then.
Oh, my apologies.
It would be 305 per the agenda.
305, I'm sorry.
We love these deliberate mistakes to make sure we're paying attention.
Exactly, thank you.
I just don't want to read the wrong thing and then we have to do this all next month.
Bravely?
Sure, why not?
Are we allowed to do any discussion on any of these things?
Do it now, or you can discuss the motion yourself. What you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we do it now and then we decide which way.
I think Lee is ready to make a motion.
Yeah, but my question was, I'm never in favor of payment in lieu. So if I say, I don't support payment in lieu, then does that automatically mean for my assessment, the second condition is not met based upon what we saw earlier? That few seconds delay at the, right? So if I don't support payment in lieu, for example, then could I consider that they have not met the burden number 2?
I think in this case, this is a perfect use of payment in lieu because there's literally no other way to capture the value. I mean, you can't have one company, what are they going to, like widen Chapel Hill Road and then put a stoplight in and everything else and spend $2 million? That's not fair for their proportional impacts. I mean, this would be if there's ever a use for payment in lieu, in my opinion, this is the perfect use of that.
But to bring it down to the special use parameters.
It is, but the only reason for
Payment in lieu is part of the regulations and standards. Therefore, whether you believe in payment in lieu.
That's a different story.
It is a different story.
Yeah, the question was because they have not necessarily agreed to do payment in lieu. And
But if we put it in the conditions, it's there. Agree or not, they have to do it. This is legally binding.
Okay.
If this is in this condition, I mean, it will have to be fixed, somehow, or it'll have to come back before the board.
Got it. Yeah.
Comfortable?
Yeah.
Lee?
Okay, I hereby to recommend approval with the 3 conditions of the staff recommendation of ordinance 2019-305-0 to the Morrisville Town Council, approving a special use permit for heavy industrial use to accommodate the future development of a concrete plant at 0 Airport Boulevard, Wake County, PIN 075-611-5330, SUP 19-02, based on the findings provided in the application packet and the additional evidence and testimony presented by the applicant at the hearing.
Thank you, Lee. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Second by Kenneth. Any discussion of the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Maddox, and thank you for the team coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't clear. Does that pass 5-0, 4-1?
5-0.
5-0.
So we're going to move on next to the land use plan update, but I think we will take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 8:05. So, okay.
That's a 9-minute break.
Look at that clock, so.
Oh.
It's a long 5
Okay.
minutes.
Lose 5.
To get from airport intersection. I guess this place causing too much confusion here.
Aren't you from India?
Yeah, I'm good with it. It's yeah. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for digging in.
That's why I figured that would be like the headline of the application.
I'm glad you brought it up. It's like the elephant in the room.
Did it seem like I just felt like they were intentionally not moving on? Maybe they're going to too many in one place. I don't know. I mean, that's just a nice little industrial part of the town. I mean, I was wondering, like, if John Deere was against them because they're the most disparate use in the whole area because it's kind of a. I've actually done some work in that building. You know, it's just like warehousing. There's a mixture of training and everything else that they do in there. So it's not industrial expresses, but I guess it really isn't bothered by it. But
It's supposed to be their training.
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, but they have training rooms where they have bring people in to help work on it and everything else. Like it's like a training night.
Were you around when they had to make a very strong case of worried about the noise that was going to change? These machines going around.
Yes.
So they showed a video. UPS over.
Yeah.
I want you to
Just let them know.
I didn't know if they said
So I need to look back at it because I didn't. I kind of thought that too, but I didn't figure out exactly what was said. So I need to go back and look at part of it. I missed that.
That's all right.
I warned you.
You warmed them up.
I did warm you up.
Yeah, so you'll be getting the presentation there.
I'm more than this.
They can swear. They can listen, yes.
Yeah, just the portion.
Left side of the stage. Yeah.
Yeah, mixed use. So this is on that we can leave for future.
How are you, sir?
Good, thanks. How are
Good
you?
to see you.
See you, Mr. Assistant Manager.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, we'll see.
Wonderful.
They're gonna actually sit here and then
The name.
kind of move up and listen to how they go through this whole mapping exercise, just like council would do.
Oh, nice to
Have
meet
it
you.
around. So they see, yes, can I see there?
Brandon Zimmerman.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, this will be exactly what we did today. So you'll be super familiar.
So we're going down there?
Oh, okay.
Will we be back up here? Or
This is
Do
good.
bring back to the attention.
I think we'll probably finish with the
Peanut gallery going by.
Yeah, so the Hindu Society looks like it's
we're going to let them know that the expansion plans. I think that's a good point for Nick to bring up.
My keys, the last time I left this thing.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, yeah, he was been very helpful in our last meeting.
He's always. So, yeah, have you?
I'm doing good.
General Commercial. Nope. It's, that's. Yeah, so they're thinking that this is more of a linear strip. This is more of a center, activity center. So that's kind of their justification for that.
Yeah, because that's changed. It is changed. All is changed.
Yeah.
But that even went more dense.
So well, general's not. I don't even know if it's as. It's actually probably less dense or intense than the activity centers.
What's in general? You put on the general.
So I think Taco Bell's and McDonald's and Bank of America.
Retail.
Yeah, retail, typical stuff.
So I just walked right up there and talked about it.
There's one behind you already.
Incognito, Martha. I was kind of like not sure how it was going to go. I was worried about. She rigged herself in. I'm like, she rigged herself in. Like planning board. Looking at this.
You got here, like
You're in the first step.
Yeah.
I saw him.
He doesn't realize. Oh, that'll be fun, I promise.
You're out.
So you haven't done any community planning exercise. All right, I'm good. Yeah, we're going to keep it as simple as possible.
Stress. I see. I have stress already. You can see that. I'm gradually back.
This is all 30,000 foot view stuff. All gonna.
He's going to have 10 questions
for you later on. Yeah, we're gonna have a
Make something and just go.
See, these are all very general land use districts. It's not zoning. Very different from zoning. It's more like you're not fire engineering. See in the next 10 to 15 years in these areas, this land use designation.
So we don't get to crawl over and color.
Nick's gonna do a good job going over.
I want a sheet from somebody. So who do I want to sit next to?
He's been the longest, so he might be a good.
I just didn't know if we.
No, I think.
Not a test. Best friend.
All opinions, voice are welcome.
You sit down.
We are not voting on it. This is just
This
draft.
thing will raise up. And I mean,
It's not the last time you're going to see it, so.
It's hard to hear sometimes when on the recording.
Speak louder,
I
man.
know. I yell at everybody all day. I'm very calm.
This is all. I'm good to go and sit.
Okay. You can turn this around.
I'm going to sit here. Well, true. They have that way. We can turn it this way.
So I did not announce, because I didn't realize, this is going to be a working session. Table. The good folks who are here tonight are welcome to look at whatever's on the screen or look over our shoulders. Physically interfering with what we do on the chart may be beyond what we're expecting, but please feel free. So Brad, you're going to lead the session.
Yep, just the
Just explain to the audience that this is the first time that the Planning and Zoning Board has seen this draft future land use map. sure we will have lots of questions.
Straighten this out so I can see the rest of the legend.
There we go. All right. So thank you for your patience. This is the land use plan update, draft future land use map meeting. So the draft future land use map is arguably one of the most important tools in excuse me, the land use plan update process. It essentially lays the foundation of what eventually will become zoning. So what you're going to see is a pretty good detailed presentation on how we got to this map, what factors are input into this map. We're going to explain why the map's important to begin with, and what the map means. You know, what is the next steps? What are these actually? What does it lay in the ground for? And so, in general, these are large land use areas. These are not zoning districts. These are not specific to development requirements. These are 10 to 15-year horizon districts. What do we expect in these areas? What kind of development patterns do we see? Densities, general use types do we see in these areas of Morrisville? So what we're going to do is have Nick go through kind of an overview of all those things, and then we're going to have the Planning and Zoning Board dive right into the geography of Morrisville and look at 6 different sections of town and offer comments on those sections for the proposed uses. I should say that this is the very first time that Planning and Zoning Board is actually seeing this map, so they'll have lots of fun questions for us to answer. And we will go ahead and start the presentation if you're ready. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for giving us the opportunity to meet with you tonight. We're going to go through, like Brad said, a couple of things. Before I get started, my name's Nick Davis with Hustle Levine. I think we've met before. I just want to make sure. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I know I can talk a little fast, so I'll try to slow down as we go through this presentation. I don't want to spend a lot of time here, though. A big part of what we're doing tonight is going through the maps. So a lot of this is just kind of background, how we got to where we're at, some brief descriptions of the land use designations that we're talking about, some examples, and then really where we're heading next. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to go through this. So just real quick at a glance where we're at in the process. We've done the first 5 steps. The first 4 steps were a culmination of a lot of outreach that's been conducted, a lot of homework, a lot of research, reviewing past plans and studies. As we started to get into this phase 4, phase 5, the planning started for the project. So we established a vision, we worked through some goals, and we worked through some basically what would be like guiding principles or policies that will inform both what we're talking about tonight, the land use plan, but ultimately the land use plan document. We've done some of the sub-area planning. We've been working on that throughout the process of the plan. But tonight, this is really the first opportunity. Today is the first opportunity we've had a chance to put this land use map in front of, first the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, and then you, the Planning and Zoning Board, and start getting some feedback. What we decide to do with this land use map will greatly inform what we do with the land use plan update. So a lot of those recommendations, a lot of those policies are going to be reflected by the changes that we're going to make geographically on this map. So tonight's an important part of the process. The next step is we're in the middle of step 6, phase 6, is starting to take this map and write the policies that'll ultimately lead to what we're trying to achieve. So that's going to be a little bit more of a deep dive. We're going to talk about specifically what you can do in each land use designation, what the build form might look like, and those types of recommendations. So that's sort of our next step. And then all the other sections that'll tie in. And then ultimately we'll get to phase 7, which is the actual plan document itself, and start going through adoption. So critical point tonight, sort of turning into all the planning side of what we've been building up to. Purpose of, and Brad sort of touched on this, purpose of the future land use map. It does guide the types of uses allowed on a given parcel. Each color represents a unique set of uses. It's the type, the form, what's appropriate, if it's commercial, office, industrial, whatever that mix of use is within that land use designation, that's what that color represents. The future land use districts are generalized, and I won't call them districts, they're future land use designations, and they're generalized intentionally, so you have some built-in flexibility. The future land use also lays the foundation of what will inevitably become some of the nuances within your zoning. So again, this isn't, and like Brett said, this is not zoning. Nothing, even when we get this plan adopted, it is not adopting anything inside of the zoning code, but it will inform the zoning code in the future. The zoning code is going to need to respond to all of this public feedback, all of this input. So this is the beginning of when you go back and re-examine your code in the future. What has the community been saying? What are the expectations? How do we see ourselves growing? And how does the zoning code either align with what we're expecting, or is it out of alignment? What changes need to be made? Even though the future land use may have similar nomenclature to the existing zoning, it is not zoning. So if we change something on this map, it doesn't mean it changes in zoning. That's a whole different process. So it's important because I know that's something that can be a challenge. Sometimes people think that this process is us changing what someone by law can do, and that is not the case. The draft land use map inputs. So we've had quite an extensive process that built up to these recommendations, both visually, what you're seeing on the map, but also the policies that we're starting to establish. We've had extensive public outreach events. We've done a market analysis. We've conducted several stakeholder interviews. We've had 3 planning and zoning board work sessions. We've had 5 town council work sessions. So there's been a lot of players giving us the input that we need to get us to where we're at today. We're going to continue that process as we work through not only what we're doing tonight, but also as we continue moving forward. That outreach, that input, that feedback is very important to make sure that at the end of the day, you have the plan that you want, this community needs, and everybody's excited about what it can achieve. This is just a brief summary of the goals that we prepared. So it's kind of like a snapshot of each one. These are a little bit more detailed, the actual goals themselves, but it gives you a sense of what we're trying to accomplish. So the first one, and these are not in any order, but the first one, community image, building, and placemaking is a goal. Another goal is fiscally responsible development that reflects the needs of residents. Another goal is strengthening diversity and quality of residential development. Another goal is provide employment opportunities and strengthen the tax base. Create a vibrant mixed-use town center. Capitalizing on new transportation infrastructure and transit. Ensure high-quality public services can be provided. And then this last goal is natural resource and open space protection. Okay, so this is your current future land use map, which is it's right here on the board that'll be in front of all of you right now, but at some point behind some of you. To the right of that is also an existing aerial. So just to give you some context as we go through this, and this is this can be a little challenging, so we're going to try to do this in pieces. The way this is broken out into the 6 areas should make this a little bit easier to digest. But what we want to do is go through the current land use map, and we want to compare that with what we're talking about in terms of what the future land use map could be. So we're going to be looking at the future land use in these little areas. We're also going to be looking at the current, and then I recommend that you look at the aerial just to give yourself some context. So if you have a question or comment, and then I have Brad, myself, we can kind of walk around and point to stuff as well. So as we break down these land use designations, the first one is low density residential. It's a larger lot size, single family detached homes. It's 1 to 4.5 dwelling units per acre. So it's going to be explained in more detail in the plan, but this just kind of gives you a snapshot of what that land use designation is trying to accomplish and what it might look like. So this is an aerial that gives you an example. There's aerials provided for each one of these. You have this in a handout. I see some of you already flipping through it, so you're good. But you can use those as a guide. So as you're going through and filling out these questions that we're handing out to you as you're marking up the map. Just know that you can flip through this. There are some even deeper levels about what we're trying to do within each one of these districts or each one of these land use designations. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. Medium density residential, narrow lot size, single family detached and attached homes are appropriate here. You can start to see that mix in this image. So the difference between that low density residential versus that medium density, smaller lot sizes, perhaps smaller buildings, tighter setbacks, that type of thing. The dwelling units per acre, 4.5 to 7.5 dwelling units per acre. High density residential, narrow lot sizes, single family detached, attached, and multifamily homes. But primarily this is going to be made up of a very dense, either a multifamily building, standalone building that might accommodate both apartment or condo. You might also see single family attached in different scales. The dwelling, it's 7.5 dwelling units per acre at least. It might be greater. It would be greater. The neighborhood activity, neighborhood activity center, moderate scale mixed use activity centers that serve as convenient, walkable service and retail destinations for surrounding neighborhoods. It'll have a mix of residential, retail, cultural, entertainment, and office opportunities in a mixed use village center with street level uses that generate pedestrian activity. The business activity center, access to daily retail and service needs within walking distance of the primary office uses. So a lot of this is going to be what it's supporting, what it's adjacent to. Mix of residential and local retail in the context of a small mixed-use community center within a surrounding office concentration. The regional activity center, significant regional employment, retail, education, healthcare, entertainment, or mixed-use destinations at key intersections of major transportation corridors in the town. Improved access to job, a compatible mix of uses, and access to a variety of transportation options. The general commercial areas that are located along the transportation corridors that meet local and regional needs for sale of goods and services. Structures and site located along the primary transportation corridors and gateways to Morrisville present a positive visual image of the community. Town center, a vibrant town center near Morrisville's historic crossroads to help ensure that residents continue to enjoy the best qualities of small town living as the community grows. And you can see that on the map where that's located. It's just to the north of us. Office, a broad spectrum of local and regional employment that offers high quality employment opportunities and supports a balanced tax base. And then suitably located sites for single-use office buildings with ancillary services necessary to support the predominant office uses in locations with regional transportation access. Industrial, an integral component of the town's employment base. Co-location of industrial uses that are compatible with office, commercial, and other employment or institutional uses is encouraged. A campus-style industrial park are appropriate along the major corridors. So again, that's some of those nuances within the land use designation that we can talk about when we start writing these specifically, what those policies are. Institutional accommodates civic or institutional activities as governmental and public buildings, schools, and places of worship, and ensures that they are compatible with the overall character of the town and its surroundings. Parks, greenways, and open space. So open space and recreation areas that meet the physical and natural resource needs of the town and its residents, enhances the town's aesthetic appeal within the neighborhoods and along the transportation corridors, and then reduces stormwater runoff with increased pervious surfaces. Transit-oriented development. There's a note of this that we show in a kind of a deep purple. It provides the critical mass of development types and intensities needed to support transit. For example, it provides pedestrian scale environment with a mix of residential, commercial, public, and employment uses to support the adjacent transit corridor. So some of the key takeaways from the draft map that you have in front of you. Overall consolidation in a number of land use designations. So we've removed a couple or reassigned them to another use that's more appropriate, which we can talk about as we go through each one of these 6 areas. New higher density residential uses better focused in areas receiving major investments in transportation, infrastructure, and transit to relieve development pressure on existing single-family neighborhoods. So there's a lot of these residential neighborhoods that are already in transition or in a good position to transition, and the land use plan is trying to set that up. Modest expansion of the the transit-oriented development to better accommodate potential bus rapid transit routes and provide an improved interface with Wake Tech Community College. Designated significant portions of the industrial areas as business activity center. I think that's a big one that we'll talk about when we get to that. It's a big departure from what was in the 2009 land use plan or what's currently in it. And that'll better serve as a gateway for Morrisville. Majority of the area was unassigned future land use. The airport noise overlay adjustment will be required. Single-family use is not recommended in new business activity center district along McCrimmon's Parkway. Town center area assigned some land use. That area was previously unassigned in the future land use. So those two, I would say, are probably some of the major departures from what you saw in the 09 plan. We'll be sure to get into that when we get closer to it. And then very low-density residential districts have been transitioned to low-density residential districts. So those are the three, I would say, fairly significant land use changes, or we're really just giving more details to what wasn't in the previous map. Oh, and that's it. Okay, so what I'll do now is, am I able to pull? Yeah. This might be all right. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, and I'm going to have to come over by you so I can see the area breakouts, but we're going to go through these in sections, in areas. Otherwise, I think it's just a lot to comprehend. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to go through, well, first of all, do you have any questions? I know we're just kind of like diving right in here. Any questions, comments? Nope. Okay, let's dive right in then. So in the first area, what we want you to do is you have a handout that we gave with you, and if you could do us a favor and just kind of work through this. If there's something that sticks out, work through the questions. I'm going to give each person a couple of minutes to work through this. We'll give you like 7 minutes. And just, you can draw on the map, you can draw on your sheet, but just go through these. And if you have questions, I can kind of walk you through what's changed in the from the 09 to what we're talking about now. But I think to do that, I should probably come over by the...
Section 1 on the map in front of you is the first section we're going to examine. So just follow the Section 1 worksheet instructions, which ask you to list some benefits or opportunities you see with the proposed land uses in Section 1. Second question is what are the challenges or weaknesses that you see with the proposed land uses in Section 1. And then third question is basically what would you recommend differently? Like what are some changes you would recommend making to some of the proposed uses in Section 1? And you guys have about 7 or 8 minutes to do that. I'm going to lift these maps up. This is a 2019 November 1st aerial of Morrisville, so this is the latest and greatest possible thing that you could look at in terms of what's happening on the ground now. So if you want to use this as a reference, please do that. We also have our our current 2009 land use plan map here, just to give you some context of what was changed and what's being proposed next.
Yeah, and as I go through this for the first one, there's not a lot of significant change in this first area. I think one of the things that you'll notice right away is we're showing a lot more of the green, the open space, the parks, greenways, and open space designations being applied to areas that are truly parks and open space or common areas. So I think that's one major thing that you'll notice. So we're not taking parcels that are currently residential and transitioning them to open space. We're just calling them what they are. There are some increases in density. There's some areas that are currently of lower density, and we're bringing that up to match the residential designations that are around them. And then I think the only other slight changes are the way we've allocated some of the, so you can kind of see it here, the neighborhood activity center, where that's applied. I think that's really the only significant changes in this area.
This is just right now Section 1.
We already killed part of
So just section, we're looking at Section 1 right here on this map.
We already killed there. They will have to. It's not there. That's the apartments that are being
And these
built.
questions are meant to start your dialogue. If you have other comments that you want to make or something specific sticks out to you, please feel free. Now's the time to give us that feedback.
So we're just looking at Area 1 right now.
Correct. Yes.
Which is this very odd-shaped
Okay, so
area.
for the Kitts Creek Providence Place, there's a couple of condo neighborhoods and then.
So this is what you're suggesting, or you want alternatives to this?
This is what's being recommended. Yep.
I mean, honestly, this area, there's really, other than this spot here, it's pretty much all built. So I guess that will be there.
There's a couple of pockets where there's opportunities for new construction, but yeah, most, and that's going to be true in a couple areas that we go through. Is we're trying not to radically change anything that's currently one use that's built out.
Right.
But in most cases, we're talking about opportunities in the future, things that are aging out.
Right. It's kind of weird to think of anything in this area as aging out because
when you're thinking 15 years out, though, those are things that you want to consider. Or if there's enough of an opportunity, there's potential for redevelopment.
This is the only change here.
Yeah.
So this is the end of
What was
Breckenridge.
that? That was very low. That's low or very low? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so this was low density.
Okay.
We're bringing it up.
It's kind of hard to tell on that one. Though.
It is.
Just
Those
exactly
two
those two
yellows are
shades.
so
Yeah.
close. Yeah.
Here.
It's 12 properties.
Yeah.
It's a little. It's interesting in my own mind how it's clashing a little bit because you've got all this green shown, which is basically just undeveloped, but it's part of what it really is part and parcel of these areas. It's kind of throwing my mind off a little bit.
Not exactly undeveloped.
Right, it's not, and it's not exactly parks. A lot of it's just trees, but
Yeah. So I think in a more genuine discussion, when it's shown as like here, it would be shown as high density residential. Right. If that whole thing is shown as high density residential, it's sort of misleading because that does play with your densities in a way that it isn't true to the
but
ground.
it's sort of misleading the way it is now. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is.
There's really no way other than if you maybe hatched it that you could really sort of communicate that it's.
Because it is open space. It may not be a park.
But it's not anything that can ever be developed, and it really, it's not.
Yeah. So it's unprogrammable open space.
So I have.
Yep.
Orientation here is still what we're looking at. So
Those are the apartments.
Why is this high density right in between next to
This
the
is under construction, as I understand.
Yeah, so we're looking at this area. So why is this high density?
Well, that's the office building that's way back here.
Right.
These are like vacant up in the front. I think that may be where the daycare is. Yeah, and that I think is where, this may be the daycare, and that's that little.
Open a Google map for us and kind of show us where we are.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it on there if you could zoom, if you could make your eyes zoom in.
Right now, why do you think is high density appropriate, especially right next to Davis Drive?
As opposed to what other?
I'm going to get my iPad.
I was actually thinking that.
See what's in there.
Yeah. So I think at some point, this all being business activity
Somewhere, is it around here or?
Challenging because it's not all
Yeah,
going
so
to be office.
Suvas already kind of told me
I think what we're trying
deal,
to
so
do
we.
here is give some flexibility.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll let them know
Both
that.
of these are going to be
I'll told Suvas.
So we'd like to merge it,
I think we agree.
That's all built. That's all built.
That was
There's a building on it right now. There's a church on it right now.
Inside the neighborhood activity center.
Actually, let me get this real quick, and I'll find you and grab
Use
it.
that's appropriate. So that use is accommodated inside the neighborhood activity center.
Well, that's why I was wondering. The same thing, why could be extended up here, right? Because
this makes, so when you're talking about that, it's residential and retail anyway, right?
Exactly.
So it's sort of that. So what you're saying.
I think at some point we're saying this isn't all going to be retail, so we're trying to put some focus to where those are going to happen, where that node is going to be. So any of this could accommodate residential, and some of it already does. If we were to redevelop in the future, residential would be appropriate. Some of this could also accommodate commercial or office uses.
You know, what would be really interesting to have is an overlay of like kind of what it is currently, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going back and forth.
I think that's what Brad might be pulling up right now.
So this is kind of the general area we're looking at here. So this is the section 1 on your map. And so if there's a specific area that you're struggling with, I'm happy to zoom into it, just to offer clarity. And this is November 1st, 2019 aerial, so these are very, very, very up to date. And it'll get you an idea of what's on the ground now.
So that, could you pull up that McGrimmon intersection closer towards Davis Drive and.
You just point the map on.
So right here, right between the two pink areas there.
This right here?
Yeah, and then even going a little further west, but yeah.
Further west?
Closer towards Davis Drive. Is that Davis Drive?
This is David Drive right here, yep.
That piece is
Right.
This is the piece, right?
Yeah, so we're looking at that. Right. Yep.
So we got about 5 more minutes of this section. So we got to move through these pretty quickly, unfortunately. But if there's any more detailed questions, we'll have to answer them all. When you said this section, you mean section 1 or all of the sections? 1 through?
So just section 1 right now. So let's do maybe 3 minutes left.
Yeah. You might want to say why. I mean,
That's why I put a question mark.
I will infer.
And in about 3 minutes, we're going to go to each member, just ask them to kind of summarize their thoughts about the area.
Should we say?
Yeah, or write down on your sheet if you want to put a number to it, or you can write the question mark. So I would do like 1 with a circle.
Just another minute.
So this isn't the one that Tricia sent you, is it?
That's a different one. This is well, these are the layers. Oh, I didn't know that. Cool. Yeah, this is a brand new one I made with Trisha's shape house.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is already approved for
Yeah. We'll just stick with what we got.
Yep.
All right. Pencil down. All right. So who would like to go first to kind of just share an overview of their thoughts for this section based off of what you wrote down on the worksheet? Is there anybody volunteer?
The first section?
Anybody else?
Yes, we just had a question around on the section 1 between the 2 pink areas where it's currently, or looked at high density, as to different options for that. So it's sandwiched between 2 neighborhood activity centers, and the question would be, would an option be continuing that neighborhood activity center, or actually switching it up and having it more of a low density? The rationale for the first one is to have more continuity across the space, and the option for number 2 on the low density is just to alleviate some traffic patterns along a busy corridor.
Okay. And this is the area they're talking
Yeah.
Yeah, which is currently undeveloped, right?
Well, that's I can actually zoom to that.
That's the one you just showed.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the other one, thinking about neighborhood activity center, it gives us a bit more flexibility as well in terms of it can be residential as well as include some business stuff that they can do there.
There is development there, just for the record. It's higher density development. Yep. All right, who's next?
I'll go.
Okay.
I thought Section 1, as seen on the future land use map, looks pretty good. I mean, if anything, I would think maybe some more neighborhood activity center, the mixed-use areas. I think there's more opportunity for that on both, going in both directions on Davis Drive. And, the same thing maybe along Davis Drive, some greenways.
I mean, so, I'm looking at this, and most of this is built. There's only a couple real places that you have any opportunity. I mean, I think it generally is preserving kind of what is there. So, I mean, I think in that respect, it's pretty good. I mean, there's not much you could really do to drastically change, especially given the lot sizes. I mean, there's not a lot of opportunity to do some major development on any of these things because it's all small. I mean, there's the one piece of residential way over here, but again, I think that would be much more sort of the medium density, what you've got. I guess my biggest concern, which has always been my concern with the transit-oriented development, is going to compete with the downtown. If we ever do anything with downtown, and the fact we don't have any transit, and we don't really have a lot of real possibility of getting any transit anytime soon out this way, I don't see how we're going to do two super high-density areas so close together, but yet not communicating with each other in any way. But that's just one little corner of that. But that's that'd be good for a density area, but I don't know how that's going to work. But
so the programming might have to not. You don't want that programming to conflict with.
Well, I mean, I don't know how if they're both mixed use, they're both dense. I mean, I'm not sure how there's a way to avoid conflict. But that's the only concern, with any of that. It's always been my concern with making an outpost when we're at the same time we're trying to make a downtown. But
I was with Lee. I thought the idea that there would be higher density between the existing Breckenridge and 540 was probably about the only opportunity there was for that increased density of residential. And the challenge, of course, as Lee mentioned again, was the TOD district. To attract more development there without having some sort of improved infrastructure or commuter rail is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, we do have, I will say we have done a market analysis for that sub-area, TOD sub-area, especially for the side on the east. There is and you can speak to more of this because you've actually done the market analysis, but there is a lot of demand for higher density residential housing. So that component definitely check in terms of the demand portion. Now the retail is a little funnier. Office uses are strong, but they're a little funnier. But the retail market's changing so drastically, it's hard to know for sure where that is going to go. Good news is, at least if it's on the eastern side of the TUD in Section 2, which we haven't gotten to yet, and you'll have a lot of high visibility along NC 54. But I don't know if you want to say anything more.
No, I mean, that's just it. I think it makes a lot of sense for increasing densities for residential. The challenge becomes you don't, and I agree, you don't want to compete with your town center. I think the types of uses that would go in those two different spaces would be different, but that's something that you need to balance, and that's something that within these land use designations we would talk about. So you're not competing with something that close. You are increasing residential density.
so now transit-oriented development is basically more high-density apartments.
Not necessarily. It's just it could be more flexible on what uses are appropriate if you're doing like ground floor build-outs. It doesn't have to always just be retail or commercial. There might be other uses that are appropriate. So like office spaces, depending on what types of office spaces they are, might be appropriate. And that's something that is a shifting trend in what people want to see on ground floors.
One of the things we had talked about in that area was, given that there's this big ground out there, cricket ground out there and all of that, we had talked about potentially considering that area for some kind of a sports complex, right? Or sports-related development activity.
Where exactly?
Who had talked about
just
it?
across from the cricket ground.
Okay.
Which is right now you have identified as transit-oriented.
I don't remember that ever coming up. I mean, the Wake Sports Competition Center is just around the corner over there.
In the previous draft discussions that we had talked about, that was something we had discussed, nothing else. I'm not saying that it was anything else.
That particular parcel has been designated TOD since the 2009 plan, so it must have been a while ago. But we do have so it's not shown, it's interesting, the Cricket Park, or the Church Street Park is what it's formerly known as. It's actually in RTP, so not in our jurisdiction, even though the town owns the parcel.
It's not about who owns the parcel, right? I'm looking at, it is sitting right here.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if there is a parcel that could be developed where this entire space could be leveraged for our own advantage, that is sitting right in front of it.
I think it's a great amenity for any new development.
Well, and that's what I was pointing out is anywhere else, it doesn't make sense to have it here. Now, this one was designated as transit because at one point, I don't know whether that is even happening right now, is the railway station is supposed to be going down. Is it still in plan? I have no idea.
The commuter rail station's still alive. The BRT is a new factor that wasn't really considered in 2000, bus rapid transit. Yeah. And so this is kind of the motivation of why the TOD's creeped over to the east. Now, there already is TOD designation in the zoning map to the east. It just doesn't allow any kind of residential development. Here, we're talking about allowing some residential development. We'll get to that in section 2 as soon as we finish up.
So is there any talk about?
I have nothing to add. It's built.
Yeah. I mean, is there any talk of bus rapid transit out this far?
Yeah. Bus rapid. I mean, in fact, this is likely the route it would take up either 54 around, and Dylan Brookhouse could speak more to the exact route of that, but either up 54 or the McCrimmon Extension Way coming over this new intersection and overpass that they.
So the part that's going to go out west probably, I guess you're saying, would continue through Cary and eventually come through all the way out to there.
And so it would create a need for TOD on the other side of where it's currently shown now, because that is more rail focused, and there's a large 100-foot right of way that sort of blocks any kind of cross access between those two. But anyway, I don't want to get too into the weeds here. So this is great. Thanks for this. So this is kind of our first trial run of a section. So let's try to go a little bit faster with section 2. So same story with section 2. You'll have a sheet in front of you, just same type of worksheet. Just answer those 3 questions. You got about 7 minutes, and then we'll go around the table and get your comments.
Yeah, I would say so. Some of the things that have changed significantly or are slightly different, if you look up in the north side, the way we've broken out. So this was all shown as office. We do show high-density residential up here. That would be adjacent to the business activity center. So this would really start to serve a lot of what's going on around it. So you can see a lot more residential development up there. As we transition further to the south, still quite a bit of office along this corridor. But if you get over to here, where we're starting to talk about, this is one of our sub areas that we had broken out. So you have Wake Tech. There's an opportunity to do more TOD through here. So this is Wake Tech. This would all be TOD, and then this would transition to the office to the east. One thing that was brought up in our meeting earlier today was maybe the fire station being repurposed as something.
Yeah, someone had a good point about the fire station potentially moving purpose. One thing to note, in the 2009 plan, that big purple swath near the outlet mall, or that pink swath, was originally a regional activity center. That outlet mall is being converted into office use now. So it's no longer a retail-focused center. It's more of an office-focused center. And so that is one of the big justifications there for going from regional activity center to business activity center. So more business, if you want to go look through your pamphlet again, business activity center is more office-centric, with sort of ancillary, multifamily, and retail supporting that office primary use.
In Area 2, are there any middle schools or grade schools?
Just Wake Technical College.
So if you've got some people living in the high residential, high density area, where would they be going to school?
So we are envisioning most of those folks, and again, this is speculation, but what we're seeing of folks demand housing in that area are transient office workers, folks who aren't here long, not a lot of families, but there is a desperate need, and we've heard this from the chamber, for more housing near employment. And
Yes.
So folks reached out to us saying, hey, if there's any opportunities for that, please think of that in the land use plan. So that's what we've done.
So, just keeping that thought in mind, is there a particular reason? Well, no. Is that because there is a planned bridge across here that this became regional activity center?
It's a major transportation node or intersection, 540. So there's a lot of potential visibility with traffic there, and so retail is more of a focus in that area. Same story with the area just north of that with Walmart and the former Sam's Club.
Yeah, maybe I was looking at the wrong side. So this right here, right? This is the McCrimmon, right here.
Yeah, that's McCrimmon right there, and that's Wake Tech and underneath the number 2.
Yeah. So this is where the bridge is planned.
Yeah, so there'll be a flyover overpass. So at some point in the not too distant future, you'll be able to basically drive along McCrimmon, fly over NC-54, bypass all the mess of 54, go all the way down to Evans and Aviation, and shoot out to 40. So it'll be nice. And I should mention that the McCrimmon extension that's shown in 4, which I don't want to jump the gun here, that's just about done. It's opening the next couple of months. So. All right, that's like maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll go around the room.
Any comments as we look at this map?
This was a hard process to do. I mean, you're asking us easy questions on. We can't look at it that we can take this, and this and go, oh, I see why you're making this change.
Sure.
And I'm making notes on colors instead of thinking about where's green space.
Right? Where the parts are.
Yeah, and again, I'm happy to zoom to an aerial area. Yeah, and we tried doing it with the aerial underneath. It's just so unreadable.
Because you could have just given us each page instead of making it overwhelming. Region 2
We
and
want you
just
to see
different.
how they transition into each other. So it's important to know how, even though they're separate sections, we just broke it up for digestibility.
Is this just Brad? Why is this one small plot institutional?
Cemetery, a church.
Existing
church, yeah. So that's an existing, and that's.
And is this post office here?
I believe so. And we don't see them going away.
Start doing this.
That actually would be very helpful.
Giving me a headache.
So are there particular areas that are actually up for discussion or debate? So that isn't, not going to change that, right? Because it's
everything is up for discussion. So if there's something you feel strongly needs to change, we're happy to make a note of it. Doesn't mean it will change. It's just something that, in fact, one of the third questions on there is what would you propose differently for a given parcel or given area? You don't have to get real specific with the exact parcel, but in the general area, what would you like to see differently that's proposed?
So where is the fire station going to go?
So if you don't want to see the post office there, you can say, I think we don't, in the next 15 years, I don't believe post offices are going to be a thing. Well, let's repurpose it to something else, and we can do that.
We can just say it's in Morrisville, but we can put it in Durham, like what the post office does to people right now.
That's a whole other issue.
So where's the fire station going to go?
That's a great question, and I don't have the answer where that new fire station is going to go. I don't know if we're there yet, determining a location for that.
Within the business activity center, and the description includes daily retail and service needs, does that include restaurants or fast food shops? Okay.
Yeah. So in the little textbook example that I gave you in that pamphlet, that's a development in Raleigh near Park. It's near Inside Wade. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Inside Wade neighborhood. They have a sort of central public space lined with buildings. Buildings are up to the sidewalk.
Ground floor is retail, and those ground floor retail uses serve the office workers who live or work above them, and then behind them are apartments. So it's all sort of a nice mixed-use village.
So how's that actually working in reality? Is it
Pretty well.
working?
Yeah, I mean, I can show you an aerial of it now. And
I drove through the other day. I mean, I've been
it looks
in and out
great.
of there, but I mean,
Yeah, it is a textbook BAC, kind of use. It's heavy office in that area. Now, inside Wade neighborhood itself is all residential, but that office park in front of it is great BAC textbook example. Anyway, so I give you another minute to finish up, and we'll go around the room. All right. Looks like folks are about done. So who wants to go first and share their thoughts, their general thoughts about this particular area?
I mean, it's basically the area we have the most opportunity anywhere else in the town other than the micro areas of doing anything because it's the least developed. But it's, of course, impacted by the airport, airplane noise, so that's going to hurt you. And like you already mentioned, with trying to do any kind of residential, you got to do it on the edges rather than the middle. But office, additional office is something that is useful for the community too. What you're talking about, the whole collapse of retail, whatever, it's going to blow up all of our plans for mixed use, I think.
Retail is going to have to be creative. I think what we're hearing from experts is that this sort of niche boutique.
Boutiques.
Yeah, that retail is going to be fine if it's in a sort of destination type setting, where there's other uses complementing it. Standalone shopping centers are in trouble. Those typical 1990s, 1980s style shopping centers that you've seen in the past. That model is starting to change dramatically.
But even places with boutiques,
it's not a.
If you go up to Cornerstone, they haven't had a great time keeping things in there. They've had a lot of restaurants go away. There are a few boutiques still there, but it's not been, that's kind of a place where you could have that work. So it's like you really have to have a concentration of it somehow.
Yeah. Placemaking is very important. All right, anybody else?
I wish we could accommodate some more high-density residential in that area somewhere.
So you think it's too much office or too single use?
Too much office. And it kind of goes back to what you are hearing from people too, right? Is they want somewhere they can walk up to. And what we have done, what the perimeter parkway, this intersection here, I think, right, where that apartment is.
Yeah, it's near, so there's apartments down there and there's one right there, yeah.
Right. What I see going down every day, I see people just walking up to offices and coming back.
Yep.
People who live in that hotels prefer to walk. We need to create more of those.
Okay.
Can you do like a high density residential? Is it possible to do that in the airport area?
We do, for the most part, allow, especially with this business activity center designation, we do allow for that.
But the areas in the airport overlay I can't remember if you were allowed to do anything like that. Like if you did
We'll go ahead and tackle that now. I was going to wait till section 4 of them.
But it goes into that too, right?
The overlay is something we are going to recommend gets adjusted. It takes up a quarter of our land area, actually probably more than that if we did the math, of our land area. It restricts it from residential development. So what we're going to propose, and we're going to get more of this in section 4, is an adjustment to what's allowed in that overlay. And I don't want to get into that now because we're not quite there yet. We're close to it, but we're not there yet.
So you're not going to change the shape of the overlay?
Not the shape.
Okay, I got you.
What is permitted in those areas. Now that's, when I say permitted, we're getting into more zoning territory. I'm trying to
it stands to reason you could build a 5 or 6 story apartment building, masonry and whatever with insulation that wouldn't be impacted so severely.
It is making the homes more soundproof, essentially, right?
Yeah, and if you remember from the presentation Nick was giving, Single-family homes are difficult to do that for, so that's why we would likely recommend single-family homes in former airport overlay restricted areas.
Yeah, and that's why I was looking at more high-density neighborhood, business, neighborhood activities, right, that can have homes. So
And
those
I think
kinds of
Council
things.
Levine would agree that's a fairly reasonable thing to request in that area.
It looks like to me, I mean, that the plans incorporate a lot of high-density residential through almost every area. Not so much in some and a lot more in others.
The biggest theme of this plan, if I had to give it one theme, is we're trying to focus higher density residential in areas that are receiving major transportation improvements, major investments in transit, and way as a kind of a pressure release valve on the western side of town that's sort of already, lack of a better term, kind of crowded. It's already sort of established. We want to, folks seem to have a desire to maintain that single family vibe there, and so we're trying to shift where a lot of this capacity can be handled towards the eastern side of the town.
Yeah, and you have to remember that it's not just about homes and offices. At the end of the day, we have to think about schools. We also have to think about, if they are going to get transported over this side, we still have to think about those, students.
I still like the idea of making the schools be an RTP so we can develop the town and make tax money. So if they keep doing that, it'll work out pretty well.
Anybody else have any thoughts about 2? Okay. All right, so section 3. So this section, includes this. You can look at the screen if you like. This is what's now Adams Products. It's a large industrial site. The kind of 10 to 15-year vision of that is at some point that may transition out of an industrial use and be up for redevelopment. So on our current zoning map, and we've envisioned that as TOD, but so in the land use map, we've also kind of reflected that reality or speculation. You have a Montessori school and an elementary school here. This is Town Hall Drive. This is Church Street. This is kind of the spine of Morrisville, if you will. And further south, you'll notice the town center area. Now, this is the area where it's envisioned to have a downtown, a mixed-use, vibrant, walkable downtown area. And so it's more community-focused. It's probably more civic-focused than, say, the TOD would be. There would be more public investment potentially in that area than say the TOD, where it'd be all probably strictly private. So this is more of a public-private partnership type area than what the question earlier about TOD, and so that's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, and this area is much different than what's shown in the 09 plan. So
Yeah.
if you look back at the 09 plan, a lot of that is undesignated.
It's a big gray blob.
It's shown as town center plan. So the town center footprint is significantly smaller in the land use plan that we're identifying, and then we put more detail in the land uses that we think are appropriate that surround the town center. And then when we start talking about the town center, that'll be a sub area. We've already developed a lot of that. But that language would be very specific to that red area. And then everything around this has more support on really what's appropriate. Is it high density? Is it medium density? Does it continue to be civic? That type of thing.
And there are some notable historic properties as you go further south towards Morrisville Carpenter Road. But we do envision most of those, even the parcels around those, will be redeveloped.
Yeah, so a majority of this makes sense as high-density residential to the south of the town center, and then to the north, already some high-density residential occurring.
So we're going to give you just a few minutes here to do the same exercise. Just please fill out the form, and we'll go around the table. And let me know if you need me to zoom into anything.
What type of institutional use are you thinking about behind the town center area?
So right now, that's currently this building, the municipal services building, the former Parks and Rec, which is now the communications department.
County Annex Building, I'm not sure what you call it.
Baptist Church.
And then Food Hub back there as well.
And then that parcel is the church.
And we're talking about 10 to 15 years here.
We are.
Yeah, 10 to 15 year horizon. So think, what's some trends you're seeing now that you expect to continue on the next 10 to 15 years? And are those reasonable to assume as usage shown?
This building up.
I think that train left the station, Sanjay.
So does this plan, we were showing schools and so forth, but does it take into consideration some of the additional, so we've made a shift where was a grade block to the recommendation on high density? Is that?
So a lot of these are existing, and it's the land uses show. So a lot of the high density uses actually are existing apartment complexes. So it's just reflecting what's on the ground, and we don't expect those developments to be dissolved or demolished in the next 10 to 15 years. So we're just carrying on.
Yeah, and if they were, I think high density is still an appropriate use there. But I don't think that they're being redeveloped within the next 10 years. Did you have a thought?
Well, I go back to the what's up for debate, right? So in that statement, it makes a lot of sense, right? So we're saying, the majority of this is developed, it's already done. What's the not done in that time horizon that really has a flexibility? So you could say, yeah, I want to put any amusement park there, but we're not going to put an amusement park there. So what's the realistic parcels that are, that has a flexibility?
Yeah, so I would say these parcels have an opportunity, right? I mean, this space is through here. This space, not tomorrow, but soon. We're identifying the 2D. So a lot of that frontage along the railroad has a real opportunity for, when it's ready to be redeveloped.
Yeah, a lot of the land is worth a lot more than the structures in that area that Nick just pointed out. So that's when you start to see a flip.
Yeah.
So, Brad, this does not show the extension of Airport Boulevard up here.
It does not.
So does it? I know, but if one goes through, right,
Yes.
there is a bridge being cut through or whatever.
Yeah, there will be
That
an
will be
overpass.
going through it directly?
Yeah, that's a great point to make. Yeah, so keep in mind there's some major infrastructure being built there at some point in the near-ish, medium-term future. And there will be another overpass required. You're exactly right. We are not allowed an at-grade separation there, so you will have an overpass going.
Yeah, which will be in.
So that'll change
this
the
area,
dynamic.
some
Yeah,
of it will not be.
exactly.
There's no stops on this, right?
So does that change what you want?
The
Yeah,
plan
this wouldn't fit.
eventually
Right?
is to
This
have
to me,
a commuter rail
to me, this
stop
this
just
area,
here,
if at all this
which is
bridge
the
comes
genesis
in,
of this
this will
POD
be
area.
free.
But that was 2 rail plans ago.
Or even
This piece, right?
This is
Will be
ignoring-
built right
this is
under
saying
the-
that doesn't
this
happen.
corner.
Or pulled down. I mean,
Is this
yeah,
assuming
yeah.
that happens or it doesn't happen?
All right, I'm going to get you guys to wrap up here in just a minute so we can move on to the other
That's
sections.
a lot. Well, it's not a lot. That's a big if, and it's more like a big when. Like when that does happen, I think this plan should accommodate it. So that might be is medium density the appropriate designation there? Should you be thinking more high density? And then if high density is identified there in the future, it's an easier transition to TOD.
I don't, if we put high density out there, I can see a lot of, developers jumping on it and coming to wanting. On the other hand, if it is low density or extreme low density, they are not likely to go up. That's because that land is going to be too costly for them.
Gotcha. So you
either pull the ripcord and make it that, or
or make it least attractive for developers to go after that.
okay. But I think high density would be an attractive use there. High density residential.
What? But if you, as soon as you put buildings up there, and now we want to build the road up.
Oh, I
now
think
going to,
I think you should accommodate the extension of that road. Like that should be a plan
right.
for.
So that's what I'm saying. That if we put this road through, should we put high density right next to it?
So right now we have kind of a compromise of medium density residential, there is a good, you make a good point for high-density residential, especially since it's abutting this TOD area.
I think you're saying no to high-density residential, though, right? Yeah.
Or you're saying no high-density.
Because if it's high-density...
So that, I think medium is sort of a safe middle ground. Anything lower than medium is very cost-prohibitive for developers. The price of land is so high right now.
I know.
You have to do $1 million homes.
But that's what I'm trying to
You
get
want to do $1 million? I mean, that's fine. That's great.
I'm trying to discourage them from doing anything there.
What if, I guess what if someone puts medium density there? Would that be what you wanted to end up there?
The challenge I have is if we allow medium density or high density, and the road kind of comes quite late, this entire intersection is going to get too much congested. That's my bigger concern.
It's a concern. We don't know, the new capacity when that road's built. We don't know how much that's going to offset.
You're not going to extend Church Street to 4-lane.
Yeah, it will. Well, Church Street won't be.
And that's what I'm saying, right? Once the Airport Boulevard comes in, then yes, we can rethink what should be the zoning.
But it'll be too late by then. I mean, you have to think about what you want to have eventually, or else we are in the exact situation that we are now, which is where we're stuck and can't do anything. We can't, the roads didn't get expanded, but people still drove through here. I mean, that's
22, right? We always come back to that.
So how do you want it to eventually look? Why not just go ahead and do that, rather than doing this and then thinking, oh, well, it'll get, all that's going to do is cause, and maybe, hey, I guess it'd be great for people who are already here. House values would just go astronomical because no one could afford to build anything. Already, you look at any new storage facility being built. 10 years ago, single level. Now, 3-4 stories for a storage facility. That is a clear example that land prices have gotten much higher.
Oh, totally agree.
So
we're not
all we're going to do is make the housing affordability more difficult, everything else, if you don't plan for what you're going to eventually have.
It sounds to me like medium density or low density is not what you're looking for. So I don't know why you wouldn't want to show either high density or, I don't know that it's feasible to extend TOD all the way down there, but I do think high density is an appropriate adjacent use to TOD and building off of an extension that is likely to happen.
But my biggest, I don't necessarily have a problem with high density.
Okay.
My biggest worry is, and something we have been doing all along, is we are not building infrastructure and communities together. We are building communities first and then hoping the infrastructure catches up. This is a perfect example where that piece of land, we could potentially say, you build the infrastructure and then we zone it to whatever is appropriate. Otherwise, there is nothing stopping somebody from coming in and saying, yep, this is the right price, I'll go build it.
And you can do that. You can zone it at a much later time. This, again, is not zoning, though. This is...
The land use plan would...
10 to 15 years from now.
I guess I do disagree. The land use plan would stop that. It would make it more challenging for that to occur. If you said this is the land use we expect, and someone said, well, I can't make that work, or I don't think that's inappropriate. If you say medium density, someone could make medium density work there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say is...
So are you saying don't have it be medium density or have it...
All I'm saying is build the infrastructure and then build the...
But we can't control the roads. We can't control the schools.
I mean, cannot control infrastructure. What it can control is a land use that you think ultimately should be there. So if you think ultimately it should be a denser mix, that's what we should be representing on land use.
I think that's what we're struggling with. So it makes sense, right? So if you're saying, and I think you're pointing right, if you ultimately think that it's high density and you want to put that, you can put it on this map and feel that that's the right thing to do. The concern that we get is catching up to that if that actually happens, which is, you're saying it's a different process. I get it. But that ultimately becomes the concern, because if that actually happens, maybe it would be fine if you designated this as school and that, other things to kind of have an infrastructure to support it.
Yeah.
But
and I think when we talk about this, you can write specifically what you think some of the challenges would be for the site. You could even set in place if you wanted to, if you want to work with property owners or if the town wants to acquire it. You could be looking at setting aside an easement so it's controlled. Nobody could develop inside of here. This has to be set aside for a future extension. A developer who's thinking ahead on this one would want to build off of that extension. That would be what makes this parcel or what makes this entire development so enticing. Otherwise, it's somewhat landlocked right now, where in the future it has some of the best access. So I do go back to, I would say, representing the land use plan, which you think it should be in 15 years, not maybe what it could be in 5 or what it will be in 5, because you're supposed to set that policy. That's a big part of what we're trying to do with this map.
What if you connected the dots and connected airport to airport And then maybe the bit north of that line would be maybe TOD or high-density residential.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's the appropriate transition. Yeah. That's sort of that's what started this, is like, this could be high density, this could be medium density as it transitions, or, I mean, this is all high density down here anyways, so it does make sense. You could potentially pull the TOD down. I don't think a TOD could be that big and be a lot to absorb, but you could certainly support it with high density on the north side, and then on the south side, maybe a different use is appropriate.
I think maybe the best place in town, because they could walk to the town center or the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we feel like we captured all of our sentiment in that conversation? Or do we need to go individually?
Yeah.
Okay. Those are some good points, though. All right. What are we at, number 4 now? Number 4, one of my favorites. So this is one of my favorites, and I say that because it is probably the most significant change that we're doing to the land use plan here. I don't want to steal the thunder of the other sections, but so right now, if you look at the 2009 current future land use map, I know the two words are confusing, but this is what we utilize now to project the future. So this is what we're updating. So right now, it's a large gray blob. We didn't assign it anything in 2009. We said, see a future development guide that we'll make at some point in the future. We made one. It was kind of lackluster. No one really followed it. And so we're coming back and we're actually taking it seriously and we're assigning it a use. And so that's what we've shown here. And so right now, a lot of that area is sort of being opened up by this major investment of infrastructure, this Kremen Extension Parkway. And so as in sort of light of that, Housel Levine and some of the info we received felt like this could be an opportunity for a gateway district, something higher and better than what's been typically envisioned for that area. For the longest time, it's been sort of off limits to any kind of residential development, anything innovative. It's all just like been one monotonous thing, and we've heard that time counting of folks. We need to sort of depart from that, and that's fair. That's a fair opinion to have. On the other side of the coin, that is a major employment area. All the industrial is very important. It might not be the prettiest development, but it is certainly extremely important to our economy. So we want to make sure that we continue to allow for industrial uses, and we want to offer some flexibility to developers to not just be pigeonholed into one use type. So we feel that Business Activity Center, Nick can speak more to this too if you like, is a good sort of catch-all, flexible district that allows us to meet some of these housing needs that corporate office workers need, but also some of the retail demand that will be generated from new offices, and then have space for more higher tech, sort of pharmaceutical, medical, software-oriented type stuff versus sort of the traditional shipping and industrial uses that we've seen develop in the past. And so, excuse me, that's sort of our biggest change in that area. This allowing residential development, the multifamily residential development, we already talked about it a second, but I'll just reemphasize, would require some modifications to this big airport noise overlays and that we self-impose on ourselves. This is something that we worked with RDU to develop that based on 1994 noise contours. And so those noise contours they go all the way out to a 65 decibel, and that's kind of what they classify as annoying to people. And so they made this whole contour map, and they gave it to us, and we turned the contour map into an overlay district and said, okay, no residential in this area. And so it's been very restrictive for Morrisville. It takes a large chunk of Morrisville away from potential residential development, whereas other areas aren't as deeply impacted as we are. And so since there's a disproportionate chunk out of Morrisville as opposed to the other jurisdictions to be taken out, we feel that there could be some modification to that overlay. And so just like we were talking about earlier, I didn't want to steal the thunder of that conversation too much. We're envisioning a mix of office, primary office with ancillary retail and residential, supporting those office workers or office buildings. But those residential buildings would be insulated from noise. We would have special requirements in that noise overlay. To your point earlier, we wouldn't get rid of the noise overlay itself. We would just sort of modify what's allowed. So that's an important point I want to stress. And
That is the biggest takeaway. Nick, I don't know if you wanted to add any.
Yeah, I would just say the uses that we think are appropriate inside of it would be the commercial, retail, service, restaurant, office, institutional. There's also the multifamily lodging issues. Like this would accommodate quite a few
a lot of
uses.
different things. It's one of our most flexible, I think, activities that or districts that we can imagine here. And we did that intentionally because a lot of the property owners around there, expressed, they kind of had this vision, like, oh, we were going to build out this industrial complex because of this airport noise restriction. All we can do is industrial, pretty much, flex space, et cetera. But we wanted to depart from that, but also still have them have a lot of flexibility in what they can develop there. So.
And then along the corridor, we show that general commercial along, so EVs, what we have here, we show that neighborhood activity, and then there's some, go ahead.
I do have this question. Why is this left to be low density?
Low density.
Which section is that?
So through here.
It's a good question. And so the folks in that neighborhood feel very strongly about remaining low density, and so we've listened to them, and we kind of respect that sentiment. It is changing dramatically though, and folks are moving out of that area. We've noticed that folks are also buying properties in and around the neighborhood. Realistically, we're not sure. We see from a market standpoint, we don't know if we see low density as being an option or a viable land use there for the next 10 to 15 years. There could very easily be some turnover in that. So if you feel that that's not appropriate, then we could re-examine it.
Yeah, we would need guidance on that.
Yeah, I personally see it, and what I know, maybe I know some, but I don't know enough. I believe HSNC has bought quite a few of the land around.
That's our next big, So to transition into that, HSNC, and I've been working with some members of that temple to kind of explain to me the expansion plans of that facility. They've been purchasing a lot of properties in and around that temple complex. And so what you see here will likely change to show that expansion. This is sort of information brought to me after we developed this map, which is great. This is the kind of feedback we need. And so we have some pretty detailed expansion plans of how HSNC plans to grow, and they've actually assembled a lot of property, more than we even knew about. And so I think we can easily reflect that, and that's something I'm glad you brought that up.
But it's not as much into this area.
No.
I think that's surrounding this area right there.
So still up for debate on whether low density residential is appropriate.
Yeah, for that low density chunk.
This one, I still think, we need to think about.
It's a sensitive area, so we have to think very carefully about the folks who live there now.
But we're not changing what they have.
Yeah,
what they
they'll
have
be
now, right? This is
allowed
about
to continue.
This is about when it comes for redevelopment at some point in the time. One question I did have is, for Morrisville town purposes, is this enough institutional area or no?
You mean town offices and town space?
Yes, I mean all this I believe is Morrisville.
Yeah, some of that's sort of where the public works facility is. We do require new office expansion areas. We haven't got any details about what that would look like or where that would be. We're still working through.
I mean, I'm just
right
thinking,
now, yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud and thinking, would it make sense to use this area, or at least designate this area for now to be institutional? Because two things happen, right? It kind of keeps all the town and other institutions almost in proximity, as opposed to driving across the railway lines. And as the needs here grow, it kind of is in proximity to support some of that.
Yeah, it
Just
is.
thinking out loud.
Yeah, okay. I mean, and we'll look at that. It is somewhat internalized, so I don't know if that's something you'd want for your institutional.
You mean they are not connected here?
Well, that and there's no visibility, and they're always coming through all these developments.
And then behind the town, the
maybe that
public works isn't that like flood?
It's all
So, I mean, there's really not a lot of development that can go in behind that. It's not like that. It's
yeah.
It's there.
All right. I mean, in terms of the
a
needs,
couple minutes or
in terms of a capacity or the needs, that's something we can talk to the town about.
So if you don't mind just writing something down, some thoughts about what we've talked
We
about.
didn't say this either. So for this business activity center, for the McCrimmon's extension, just keep in mind there's a sub area that talks about this in more detail. So although we talk about it here on the land use map in a general sense, there's a sub-area plan within this, the land use plan update as we go through this, that's going to talk about that in more detail.
We're just not quite there yet.
We're there. We're just not there today. Yeah,
I hope you have been
it's
taking
okay.
notes.
I'm taking notes. Brad's taking notes.
This is
being
definitely
recorded.
Yeah, you're recording at least. Yeah.
You know, and to your point, I can appreciate that this can be a lot to go through, the maps, the process. So, you know, certainly if you have comments or if you follow up, maybe we send out materials that show that overlay so you could see it as the 09 current recommendation and then the aerial. If you have additional comments and you want to send those to Brad, that's also
very helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be good. This is a lot. Sometimes this is just to like digest it. If we didn't go through this, it's hard to even if we sent that out to get the feedback we probably were looking for. But I think if you can give yourself a couple of weeks after this to give us your feedback, that'd be great.
We didn't even know it was going to be a workshop.
Oh, surprise. Sorry. Any other questions for number 4?
Yeah, we can start going around the room if anyone's feeling brave. Just general thoughts.
Just make the comment that, I mean, I think there's always a little bit of a need and maybe even a desire for low density over here. Maybe not to the extent that you guys have shown it now. Maybe shrink it a little bit. But, you know, you always drive around and you see these pockets of, you know, nice big houses. And there's only like 5 or 6 of them in a little area, you know. I could see that somewhere around there.
Yeah, and those are not big homes. If you go down there, they are
good-sized lots.
smaller
Yeah.
homes.
Right. Big lots, but the
Lots
homes
of
are small.
them.
It's a very old section of Morrisville, very old in context.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have 2 feelings on that. One is you certainly want to preserve the folks who've lived there for 30 or 40 years. On the other hand, you don't want to disadvantage them by giving them a long-term land use as low density.
True.
If the highest and best value is medium density or high density. Because sooner or later, you know, time catches up with all of us and they will want to move on. It'd be grossly unfair if they can't reap some of the advantages of the fact that everything around them has gone up. So
I hadn't even thought about it that way.
dilemma.
So at the same time, you're trying to protect them because they do have a desire to keep that low density, but you're also, in essence, long-term hurting them.
Absolutely. Yep.
Any more thoughts?
Well, it's nice that you talked about business activity center and residential, but that really is as close as Morrisville gets to the airport. You're not talking about the green line or the yellow line, you're talking about the red line with noise.
Yeah, and so some background information on that again. So the noise overlay was done, again, like I said earlier, in 1994. Planes have gotten quieter. RDU did another study a few years back that showed that 65 decibel contour going from where it is now, which is sort of all the way to the 3, all the way back to I-40, so almost basically completely out of Morrisville. However, and I just spoke with the airport today in our technical advisory committee, they've been gracious to sort of work with us on this land use plan. They are still wanting us to self-impose residential restrictions in that area because they're the ones that hear the complaints or noise. They already hear a lot now, and they just feel it's better to be safe to maintain those residential restrictions. We agree with them sort of halfway on that. We think that there's some opportunity for the multifamily developments that are easy to do noise attenuation for. But we agree that, yeah, any kind of single-family development shouldn't be permitted in those areas. So what we have now is kind of what that reflects.
Just one other question. So I believe around the Aviation Parkway, these are office spaces, right around here. On this side there is industry, but on this side
it's industrial flex. It's sort of distribution. So like you'll see, like it looks sort of like an office building in front, and then like in the back you'll have like bay doors and things like. There's a lot of that.
You're talking about Southport.
Southport, yeah.
The question on the airport piece, so you mentioned like keeping up with standards and looking at noise components. Is this in context with the picture of 10, 15 years from now with land use, but on 10 to 15 years now for growth on the airport? Because if we go back 15 years and just look at the pace of traffic? I mean, are we doing a similar kind of study around that?
They have a third runway that they're currently plan on building, actually. It's moving forward from what I understand.
They made it sound very real today.
And they are trying to, correct me if I'm wrong in how they described it, they're trying to hone the flight paths of planes into very kind of constricted areas to alleviate noise in some areas, but by doing that,
It kills the other.
the areas where it's very constricted get a little noisier. We just don't know where those are.
I was just saying, my read was that's not them. That's the FAA.
Yeah, it's the FAA.
Well, in fact, in certain other municipalities, they've actually undone some of that because of that exact reason, because it concentrated the noise so much. But I mean, it's a little different here because we don't have a residential development already underneath of it.
But a lot of airports do this, and very few airports actually dictate to the FAA about what they want the flight paths to be. A lot of times that is set in stone by the FAA. Otherwise, you put the airport in the position of saying which neighborhood they will be louder over.
Having lived in a flight path for 25 years, I can tell you that Delta's MD-80s are still taking off, and they are loud. And
yes, they are.
The sooner they get rid of them, the better. But there are a heck of a lot more airplanes than there were 25 years ago. Sure. So if you do the composite noise contours, which is a fudge of taking various dB levels at various different times and applying some weird factors, I think you'll find that the noise contours are going to be about the same. And this is right slap bang in line with the runway. So if anything, the folks down here may have less noise, but it's going to get concentrated more and more on this corridor.
And more constant. Yeah.
So coming back here, isn't there, the DOT plan talks about some, weird turns around this area?
So for aviation and NC-54?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is a plan. So that whole corridor, that whole stretch from Morrisville Carpenter Road all the way to aviation to the causeway, at some point is going to be wide. We have a rough idea of how that's going to look.
They are going to build a causeway now?
They're going to actually expand that causeway. Now, timeline-wise, don't nail me on the time. Like I don't have Ben Howell here to back in on it, but it's in the not too.
It's in the 2020s.
I don't know if I want to put someone on this spot over here, but we don't have the actual date in front of you, but that is in the works. Part of that is a complete new intersection configuration for that sort of trouble spot around aviation and 54. I don't want to show you the exact configuration yet, but
all I'm trying to say, the reason for asking that was you have designated commercial on both sides of that intersection. Right, and if I remember correctly, there is one turn supposedly this way.
Right now it's the opposite way, but yeah, it's
It's going to go through Yardneek, I think, is it not?
There's a little kind of dogleg thing it does here now.
Yeah, they had option 1 and option 2, right? One option was this way, another option was from here.
Right now it's the option
north
is
side.
the north.
So. Okay.
But it's in flux.
So the vacant land.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But
there's going to be a
I
gas
guess
station.
that would that, I guess this land use makes perfect sense in that case then, right?
Yeah, it's already a heavy traffic corridor. We expect it, retail to be viable there, especially the convenience retail.
Well, I mean, somebody wanted to build a gas station there at one point, but.
Any other points for 4 before we move on? Okay, almost at the home stretch here. We got 2 more. So this is number 5. This area is it's mostly established in terms of what's there now. We don't see a whole lot of tectonic plates moving around here. We real quickly point out this area. So this is one of our lowest density residential areas in town. This is the Holly Creek Road subdivision area. And so, excuse me, right now, and let me pull up an aerial. Right now there is development happening all over and around this subdivision. So here's the Holly Creek Road subdivision. Here's a farm that's now being developed as a sort of medium to high density residential use in Cary, just over the border. Right across from there is a Wegmans. Right down here is a smaller shopping center adjoining Wegmans. And this, I think, is either multifamily. This is Cary, but I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it's a multifamily project. There you go, 50. So it's a senior living facility. And so this is kind of a tricky one. So we want to point it out. Right now, what we have recommended is sort of a transition from this neighborhood activity center. You'll CVS, Walgreens, there's a Food Line shopping center, there's the neighborhood market shopping center. We're seeing that there needs to be some sort of transition between this and this primarily residential development. So right now we have it recommended as medium density residential. We know that this area is probably going to be redeveloped in the next 10 to 15 years. It's going to be something different than what it is today. It's just a matter of what intensity that is. Now, I should point out that we've met with the property owners, the majority, just about every property owner along this road, and all but one feel that they actually want to go even more intense. They want to go to a neighborhood activity center because they feel like, well, it's already adjoining. The area is transitioning so much. There's a large road that's going to be built through here, Airport Boulevard. You can see the connection kind of made on this map here. It makes sense to just sort of bring that in. So right now, and I don't know if Nick can offer his insights because we're kind of in flux with this area. We're not sure what to do. Right now, we're leaving it as MDR because we think that's kind of a step down transition into the adjacent residential. But we're open to discussion, of course, about what you all think is appropriate for that area. Other than that, we have some area around the town's former town center, or we shouldn't call it the former town center. It's still the town center. It's just sort of it's programmed now with land uses, and this looks like a huge area for potential residential development. So one thing to keep in mind is that the floodplain comes basically right up to this little white hand here. So it's very, very limited in the amount of activity that can actually take place. So don't let that size deceive you here. And this is currently a single-family development, mix of townhomes and single-family detached, being built right now. You can see the cleared land if you drive by today. And so those are just kind of the two main areas I wanted to point out. But yeah, this is really where I want the attention to focus, though. This is an interesting one. So, and keep in mind, this is Davis Drive, very high traffic, very visible corridor. Next to an activity center, and then you have the Holly Creek subdivision. So I'll give you just a few minutes, and let me pull up an aerial so you can just kind of look again at what we're talking about.
I guess my 2 cents on that, I feel it's appropriate to show neighborhood activity center along the corridor, a transition to neighborhood as we go further north, which is what we're showing now. This is general commercial. I think back here, as you start to, and when you're looking what's beyond in Cary, medium density makes sense. High density could make sense depending on how it's buffered. I don't know that retail or service or something that would require visibility would be successful that far from the corridor, but it's something to explore. So if it was, I guess that's why, if it was neighborhood activity center all the way to the back, you have to think about visibility, access, those types of challenges.
As Cary, they denied that extra storage facility on Davis, right?
I don't know the specifics of that case. It's outside the jurisdiction.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a proposal for a Sheetz gas station right there.
Oh, okay. I thought at one point there was somebody who was going to do a storage facility somewhere that got turned out, which was...
There's one storage facility, and then they have a special use permit for another storage facility.
Okay.
So I think they're now finding that the higher and best use,
Yeah, okay.
especially in Davis,
Yeah.
is general,
Okay.
So,
commercial.
Brad, maybe this will help us. So the next sports area.
Yes. It's sort of in that no man's white land right there.
Right. Yeah. Has Cary approved that to be a high density development?
Yes. It's about 21 acres, including 6 or 7 stories of multi.
So they did approve that.
So that is high density up here.
Very high density and commercial.
Can you show that on the map?
Yeah.
Right now it's blank, but yeah, it's.
This area.
So they're going to redevelop the sports, just bulldoze it and redevelop.
That's high density?
Mm-hmm. It's
Apparently
general
that's
commercial.
Well, I mean, obviously with Wegmans coming in there, that sort of changed the
Then
algebra there.
that might make sense. Then it could be high density. I mean, you can show this as high density.
Yeah, right now we have MDR, but we could go to high density, we can go to NEC. So the neighbors have specified, the majority of homeowners on that street would like to actually go to more neighborhood activity center designation with the context of development, surrounding them in mind. However, again, we're open to other possibilities like HDR.
So rather than recuse myself from this conversation, I should at least point out that I do have a lot on Holly Creek Road, so I have a lot of interest in this. But part of our neighborhood discussion was around, we didn't want to see it done piece by piece. If we're going to do it, there's an opportunity for the town to have a uniform, a genuine use of that 50 or so acres to something that might be neighborhood commercial, or it could be something else. But it would be a well-planned total thing rather than little bits and pieces. So that was part of the discussion.
Yeah, and I would say of the three uses that we're talking about, that would be true. If it's medium density, if it's high density, or if it's an NAC, I think for any of those to make sense financially, you'd have to assemble those parcels.
So we would piecemeal designate some,
Well, I mean, this is not zoning anyway. This is what we're thinking
No,
could be in
but
the near future, so we should do
As a
that.
developer, if I saw
No,
that,
right, no, yeah.
exactly.
So how do we put on the community hat? 'Cause hearing the developer hat of what makes sense, and so where, maybe I'm missing a trick, but where does the institutional component of this come into schools? So if we're looking at high density, here's a medium density, where does that fit into the plan, and where do we?
So we've tried to, again, the theme of this is trying to restrict increasing the density on the western side of town. And so hence the medium density kind of cap that we've hit a lot of those areas. And a lot of the higher density you're seeing is being shown on the right side of town. So this is why there's a medium density there now. So if you felt it was appropriate to add more density there, schools would be a consideration to.
Yeah, so that I think that's where we're going. Think about if we're looking 10, 15 years in the future and trying to plan the map, and we're pushing or pitching high density in some areas, then when we do that, shouldn't there be a corresponding land use for services to accommodate?
Well, I mean, I guess we need to ask Wake County what they want to build, and in the future, in the very near future, people are going to be bussed all over this county no matter what, because they're going to start changing the way they assign schools again. So if you think that there's going to be a neighborhood school for people to walk to, think again. That is not going to happen.
That's okay, but
I mean, they've already announced that they're starting that.
Yeah, I get that, but I mean, if we're going to have the mindset of, well, we're going to build transit, we're going to think 50 years in the future that people are going to suddenly take buses, and I think we should also have the mindset that we should be preparing for someone has to accommodate for kids in schools, and we think about that, because it's tough.
I don't disagree, but unless you can get Wake County to buy in and say, I want to buy land and build a school there, I mean, what you can do there. I mean, what can you do?
Put it on a map and have it be the ideal. That's what we're doing now, right?
I think some of it depends on your high density. So I'm a small condo dweller, and a lot of people that work on the pharma industries and Research Triangle, they're used to that. They're coming from New Jersey or Chicago or from other countries. They don't necessarily have large homes or large families and kids. I mean, so if you're looking at one-bedroom units, calling those high densities, or a bedroom and a den, whether you own or you rent, that doesn't necessarily correlate to needing a school. So you're putting in a lot of high density, but you're getting young professionals coming in that are probably going to be pulled out of the area in 5 years.
They could be, but others come in. I mean, the challenge with that assumption is looking at demographic, of who's coming in to have kids in schools. We have people have 2 cars consistently, right? A one-bedroom apartment with 2 cars. That there's when that goes up, people have roommates and they have and then kids. So you can't really kind of predict that.
I know, but for the size of the city, I tend to agree with Lee. There's so much changing, and it's a small town that I don't know if trying to identify a location for a school as best use to the property. I don't know.
Yeah, what we've tried to do with the designations is make schools have been something we've heard a lot about in our outreach efforts. Folks want to make sure when you're doing these districts or designations that you're accommodating school sites. So a lot of these activity centers are flexible enough that school sites, even the office uses, will allow
school could
for
go beside
education
anything.
facility. We just don't want to. We don't want to be in the business of specifying this parcel right here. We'd rather have more broader term brush strokes of this area could support a school versus this parcel could. Because if we do school planning, then they may not see eye to eye in terms of which parcel exactly for school. And so we're trying to do a more broad stroke approach to the schools and say these designations allow for schools, and here are all the designations.
Practicality. So if there's a broad designation that would allow for school, but would also allow for mixed use or multi-purpose, won't a developer always go after the latter?
This depends on the type. I mean, a lot of that's timing, and it does. So when we've talked to the school district about selecting these sites, they've run their analysis on where they think the appropriate locations might be, and they won't just give us that data. But they know where they think they could be, and a lot of that's going to depend on where the students are going to be coming from. A lot of that depends on what the market rate's going to be on that property. There are areas that are within this that we've remained flexible, and for everything, not everything's going to get developed at once, right? That's going to take a while. So I think some of these areas where you could accommodate the sizes, those you're going to have to continue having that conversation with the school district when they're looking to build, but they can fit into one of these spots.
And it's no mystery where these 60 to 70 acre sites are, right? You take a quick look at the aerials, and there's like 3 or 4 of them, if that.
I mean, they're still talking about a middle school right here, right? Or
Yeah, so that's not even an it's RTP.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a decent amount of time spent with the school district as well, kind of looking at available land, seeing what we could facilitate. As Brad indicated, for the amount of area they need, it is somewhat limiting. Both Brad and Nick mentioned that this is land use, this is not zoning. But I will say, a lot of these land use designations are going to eventually translate into zoning. Keep in mind, schools are allowed in a lot of our zoning districts. So even if we're talking about business activity center, residential, schools, places of worship, there are going to be other uses permitted in those areas. You're not precluding anything.
All right, so 5, any final thoughts on 5 from folks?
Well, we talked a whole lot about that, right?
Yeah.
Part of that, this parcel, right, which is in the flood zone, why not just make it green?
Because it's still developable. It's just I just wanted to point out that whole chunk wouldn't be a big subdivision tract. So if you're thinking, oh, wow, it's too much medium density residential, the likelihood is, 2/3 of that would be dedicated as protected green space or kind of lobbed off and was treated as wetlands. So just wanted to keep that context in mind when you're looking at it. Because this map doesn't show.
No, I get that, right? But if we know that
we don't think it's not going to be developed. We think it's going to be developed. We think it's too valuable and it's on a too valuable of a corridor for it to just be all the owner to voluntarily go, I hereby renounce my.
Maybe my read on, are you saying that a portion of 2/3 of it being shown as green?
Yeah.
So I don't think he's saying take the whole parcel offline.
Yeah, and so since we're doing this parcel by parcel, we'd have to deviate from our parcel by parcel strategy, which I don't know if we're going to do. Yeah. So we kind of have to pick the most intense of the uses that we would see there in the future. We do see a medium density development happening there. It just would be very limited in how deep it goes.
But in terms of visualizing where a floodplain is, that's something I think we'll explore as we start to propose the final land use plan.
So that kind of comes down to the other part, right? Is we are, okay, this is across from the new thing. Okay.
All right, do we move on to 6?
All right. Last but not least.
I would say 6 probably is the least amount of change, all of them.
So this is where Park West Village is. That's kind of the most notable development there. We also have the Preston Wood Golf Course subdivision just south of
of Park West Village. A lot of this is already built out or is sort of spoken for. So just like to Nick's point, we don't foresee a lot of changes happening in this area. This is a lot of status quo. The only area that we may see some potential movement for redevelopment is the Park Place Shopping Center. This is sort of an older shopping center, kind of a 1990s layout here. I think 1990s is when this developed. There's a movie theater, kind of the back corner here. They just recently did a renovation, though. An O2 Fitness building, that just put a substantial amount of money and invested in their facility as well. There's a food line that's also doing fairly well. So we don't foresee this flipping in the near future, but in the sort of medium range future.
There's still unbuilt land there.
And there's still some out parcels that have not been.
I mean, good size out parcels.
Yeah.
You could see the 4 buildings that are fronting those outlots. That could be redesigned in a different fashion.
Yeah.
You take off half but basically where nobody's parking right now, that whole front 2/3 or front half could be similar to what's happening over in Park West. So.
And another thing to keep in mind, you can't see because this is Cary. This is sort of up for grabs in terms of redevelopment. This is just a large tract of land that abuts it. So you could see a developer take down this whole quadrant and do another version of Park West Village, conceivably. We don't see that happening anytime in the immediate future, but it's not kind of out of the possibilities.
I think if you go, the only other one that we took offline, I think this was shown as office. That's shown as office in the 09 plan. We show it as just an extension of the Regional Activity Center.
So write down your thoughts if you have any. If you don't, if you think it's just perfect, you should leave it alone, then you can write that down. Just put something down for us so we have a record.
What about as soon as we cross over that small bridge onto 54?
Like over the railroad tracks?
Yeah, where they're now doing it, that small shopping strip on the. It's on the Key Beach. Bridge
okay. Yeah.
Right?
So this thing right here.
That will last.
It's fairly modern. I mean, we don't see any impending doom for that little strip center. So yeah, I'd say it's probably going to be sticking around for the next upside as you go for next 10 to 15 years. Now, if you don't agree with that, you can certainly point that out. You can say, so we were talking about the Key Bridge, near the bridge, this little shopping center here.
Yeah.
So here's the railroad bridge, here's 54, here's Town Hall. So there's Key Bridge neighborhoods back here. See if I can get a panorama here. Yeah, there's a daycare back there. Yeah, we don't see it flipping anytime soon. But if you, please point that out.
If Park Place is to be redeveloped, would you change the designation, or is it still?
It would still be a regional activity center. So we'd still see retail as the main focus, even with the current climate. We think it's such a high visibility corridor.
I'm pessimistic on that. I think it's going to be the lower end retail. It's going to stay there. Park West is sucking up pretty much all of the higher end retail in that whole area, and there is there's a need for some of that, but I just feel like that's just going to languish. I don't see it changing in the next 15 years. It is.
Also, Cary looking at the train station right there too.
Yeah.
I thought it was in the other. Well, yeah, I guess maybe. But it's not going. That's not going to happen anyway. So that was 2 trains ago, and that's definitely not happening.
This piece around Page Street.
Autonomous cars are going to.
Yeah. So there's an historic. Morrisville's oldest home is in that area. It's the Page House area. So we felt that keeping it low density to preserve that kind of bucolic feel back there would be a nice community asset. Disagree though? Feel free to mark it right up.
I'm just thinking. What are the uses? If you are going to say homes, then.
I mean, you could preserve the home itself, but build around the home.
That's essentially what I was thinking is,
What
because you
intensity
want traffic there, right? You want people to go there. If you want people to visit it, you have to make something cooler around.
Or you could have some road go by it that would provide access from both sides. Never mind, that was
So looking at your
uncalled for.
handout there, what intensity of residential do you think would be appropriate?
I'm not even thinking residential.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm thinking with that historical view house around, you build a commercial place where people can hang out and visit. As you visit think about it, you walk over to a museum, you see something and you hang out around it, and that's the only way you are going to create a vibe around it. If you are going to say homes around it, the people who would go there are perhaps just individuals who are visiting that place. And I don't think anybody who has a house there would like people coming to visit the Pew House and struggle for parking.
Private property.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts about that point? Do we, from a historic preservation standpoint, we kind of preserve that Morrisville Crossroads rural character around the Pew House, or do you see that kind of redeveloping around more of a medium density?
The whole concept of the town centre is so diametrically opposed from what it was in 2007, 2009. I look at your picture of a downtown in here. That is like 1,000 miles away.
Well, I mean, and I know you're talking about preserving the whatever you call the nature of the town center, but I mean, when these people made the town center, did they sit there and say, we never want it to be anything other than bucolic, nothing developed? No, they probably thought there would be other things built there in the 100 years. I mean,
they would have loved it in Manhattan.
Well, I remember in my lifetime, there was other structures there. There was a little bit of an actual sort of crossroads that was developing, and it just sort of got, taken away by other things. But I mean, I think at some point, probably the idea of building a gas station around that corner was because that was a reason to do that. I mean, we can get stuck in the always thinking of, oh, well, things just were a certain way. I don't know. I mean, if you built something around something, like you said, I mean, I'm not saying you should necessarily do that right around there, but I mean, you can sort of respect other things that were there, but not like freeze yourself in that same time period, because it's not the 1890s.
I mean, you have to have foot traffic to a historical place. Otherwise, that's just going to be there for people to pass by, and it's just going to run through inside.
Yeah, I mean, we can continue to examine that. We'll look at it.
The other thing was, I thought the Sikh community bought the land to build some.
We don't have a formal development proposal, so we don't. Anytime someone speculates on what they are going to build there, we get sort of hearsay, or we intend to come forward and build this, but we don't have an actual site plan we're looking at. We typically don't.
Understood. But with that, I'm just trying to understand that piece
that
of
work
land.
there. I mean,
is this zigzag one that space, or is it really in this green space?
I think it's the zigzag one. The first one you pointed out was,
this one?
Was the initial Sikh temple site. Now I don't know what the status of that is.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's not in this green zone, right?
No, as far as I know, it's not. No. So that's town-owned property. So that big green chunk right there, where you just circled, that was purchased a few years ago for the Greenway extension. They used to be go triangles.
Oh, because they were on the depot there, or whatever, or something, right?
They wanted
something.
a long time ago. They purchased.
Two trains.
For that, the first train. And so now the town came in afterwards.
So that they could do Morrisville Parkway without upsetting things.
Yeah.
As you said, a long train ago.
Any other comments?
Right. Well, this is great. This is our first attempt at something like this, so I appreciate your patience. We're going to go to council. So we've been to the technical advisory committee with this exact same map. They offered some input, which we're going to take and write down. You offered input tonight, planning zoning board. We're going to take this exact same map to town council in January and ask them to do the exact same exercise you all are doing, the exact same worksheets, exact same pictures, everything, and get their input. And so we'll have kind of 3 stages of input on this initial first cut rough draft here of the future land use map. Then once we polish it up a bit, we're going to take it on the road to the public. The general public's going to be able to comment and offer their input on this. Because they haven't had a real opportunity to dive in. You all are sort of the first wave of input. So.
Who is on your technical advisory committee?
There's a fair amount of folks. I can't recite all their names, but I can provide you a list after. Generally speaking, it's developers, residents, business owners, professionals in the planning field, architecture field, things like that. So just a group of knowledgeable folks who offer outside perspective. All right. So, Nick, I don't know if you have anything, closing thoughts?
No, I mean, the only thing we want to make sure is this isn't the last opportunity that you'll have to see this land use map. And then as we transition into the next phase, start to actually draft some of the recommendations, you'll also have an opportunity to see those as well.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Where would we have kind of talked about parking in this area. And where did we finally settle down? Is it going to be parking against, or are you thinking parking against?
I think there's quite a few areas now that have parking. So there's not like one
About the
spot.
town center?
No, for the town center.
Yeah.
We talked about
some
building.
Isn't that all in flux right now?
It's deceiving to look at this, but it's basically parking could be here, there'd be some here, there'd be some in the back of the east.
We had also talked about around this lake. So that's why, because you put them as high density residential.
Well, I don't
This
know.
started out.
Yeah, this would.
That's the other thing that I was talking about.
This wouldn't park the town center, though.
So I'm not saying you can't build a parking lot there.
You could, but I wouldn't recommend it. You could park it in the town center, close to the town center. That area is big. It's deceptively big.
So one of the work sessions that we had with town council about the town center development was, what are your preferences for parking? Do you see the town center downtown development being a surface lot only primary type development, with, large surface lots with buildings kind of along the street, or did you see structured parking and higher densities and more of an urban feel? And council overwhelmingly was like, we don't want it all to be surface parking. We'd like it to be structured parking. Now, how that's paid for, we haven't figured out yet.
It's a mix, because we show structure parking, surface parking, on-street
I
parking.
get that. I was just wondering, the place where you have high density along Page Street and Ash Street, that area.
They're just, I think what we're leaning, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're looking at more narrow lot, single family detached. Correct. In that, and to do the narrowest lot, like Kids Creek is, I'll just use, I hate to get into zoning, but I'm just going to do it right now. Forgive me, Nick, I'm sorry. Kids Creek area, most of that's high density residential, even though most of it's single family detached, but the lots are so small and there's so many people per square mile or square acre or whatever, that the density makes sense to go high density, to permit that type of intensity. So that's kind of similar thinking here. Like, it's just because you see HDR doesn't mean it's all apartments. It could be narrow lot. It's just like that picture that we showed you in the pamphlet. It could be narrow lot, single family detached. It could be townhomes. It can be sure. We envision, I think, when we get into the nuance of this town center area, as narrow lot, single family detached homes to kind of respect that Crossroads Village vibe. And even though we're not a small Crossroads Village anymore, we don't want to see all multifamily there at that intersection that's already super congested and gnarly as it is currently. So that's kind of my 2 cents there.
All right, I think we'll move on. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
So Brad, if someone didn't get to completely filling out one of their sheets, can they email those to you?
I'm not filled in.
So we're supposed to give it these?
I would. What I would do is, if you have any more follow-up thoughts, just email me, and I can include that on the record of this meeting. But
we should take the sheets.
But we definitely need the sheets, yes. Unfortunately.
Did you email us this sheet so that we can, at least the questionnaires?
We just want to make sure that we've heard from everyone.
When we respond, we can respond to those questions.
Yes.
I don't think we need to go back up to the rest there. Michelle, would you like to give us staff comments?
Barney, if you could bring up the planning newsletter, that would be great. While she's doing that, I guess I'll just jump ahead a little bit. we're not going to see each other again until next year. So happy holidays to everyone. Hope everyone has some time to spend with friends and family and just rest up in a little bit and enjoy yourselves. And we'll see you next year and already have a full docket of stuff for you guys to be looking at in 2020.
Yeah, and if you want to take a census pen, feel free to take census pens.
Okay, so just to kind of touch base a little bit about what has happened on the over the last month in planning, we did get one new development application in. That was for Providence Estates. That is a small 5-lot single-family home subdivision up by 540. It's going to be going through staff review process.
I assume that's near Providence Place.
I can't remember the name of the road. Something Meadow Road, close to 540. A little bit different area than Providence Place. And we did approve 4,000 Paramount Parkway. It was a minor modification. I know we don't typically put minor modifications on here, but it was really the construction of a brand new office building out at Perimeter Park, so a significant development there. Affordable housing plan that was adopted in November by the town council. Town council also did approve the Alta Morrisville development up by Morrisville Carpenter Road and Davis Drive, and then pretty slow in other news for the month.
Thanks, Michelle. So I'm actually going to add to your news there. Josh Michael was appointed starting January as our second alternate member of the board. So we look forward to seeing him in January. Board comments. Tim. Sanjay.
Just want to wish the staff a very happy holidays, and thank you for all the effort you put in, and thank you for enduring all of us with all our, sometimes nonsensical questions. So thank you.
I agree with Sanjay. Happy holidays.
Chris. Well, I'll agree with Sanjay too. So, thank you all very much. So, adjournment. Who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.